Some choices don't just change your life, they shatter the prison you didn't know you were living in. Tonight, two strangers will collide in the darkness behind a forgotten cottage, miles from anywhere that matters. One is running from a gilded cage, the other has been hiding in plain sight for years. What happens when a desperate knock on the wrong door becomes the right mistake? When survival meets surrender? When two broken people realize that saving each other might be the only way to save themselves? Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The cold hit different in the Pacific Northwest. Not the clean, honest cold of mountain winters, but something wetter, meaner, the kind that worked its way through layers of flannel and denim until it settled in your bones like an old argument you couldn't win. Lucas Reed stood in the open doorway of his workshop shed, watching his breath cloud in the yellow spill of the overhead bulb. December had come early this year, bringing with it the kind of darkness that made 6 p.m. feel like midnight. Beyond the property line, Douglas firs swayed in wind that carried the threat of rain, their shadows dancing across the muddy yard that separated his workshop from the house. The house. Calling it that still felt generous some days. It was a cottage, really, maybe 1,200 square feet of aging cedar siding and dreams that someone else had abandoned 20 years before Lucas found it. The roof needed replacing. The porch sagged on the north side. The kitchen window had a crack he'd been meaning to fix for 8 months. But it was theirs, his and Maya's. That made it sacred, even in its brokenness. He wiped his hands on a rag already black with grease, studying the knuckles he'd scraped raw trying to coax life back into a 1987 Chevy carburetor. The truck's owner had said he'd pay cash, which meant Lucas would actually get paid, which meant maybe he could fix that window before winter really dug in its claws. The workbench behind him was a monument to careful poverty, tools organized by size and purpose, each one cleaned and returned to its exact place because he couldn't afford to replace anything. Coffee cans full of sorted screws, a pegboard where wrenches hung in descending order like a metal xylophone, everything labeled in Maya's careful 7-year-old handwriting, her contribution to what she called Daddy's fixing place. Lucas checked his watch, a Timex his wife had given him 9 years ago, back when there was still a wife to give gifts. 10:47 p.m. Later than he'd meant to work, but time got slippery out here in the shed, where the only sounds were wind and radio static and his own thoughts, which he preferred to keep at arm's length. He killed the overhead light and stepped into the December night, locking the shed door from habit more than necessity. Nobody bothered them out here, 15 miles from anything that could properly be called a town. The isolation had been the point when he'd bought the place. Distance from memories, from pity, from the well-meaning friends who'd slowly stopped calling when they realized Lucas wasn't going to get better on their timeline. The motion sensor light above the back door should have clicked on as he crossed the yard. It didn't. Another thing on the list, right below the window and above the dripping bathroom faucet, that made Maya giggle because it sounded like someone whispering secrets in the night. Lucas was 3 steps from the house when he heard it. A knock. Not at the front door. That would have made sense. The driveway ran to the front of the house, where a porch light, also burned out, also on the list, would have at least offered the pretense of welcome. This knock came from the back door, the one that opened onto the muddy yard and the shed, and nothing else except 20 acres of second-growth forest that disappeared into darkness. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. Lucas froze, every muscle suddenly aware. His hand drifted toward his pocket, where he kept a folding knife he'd never had to use, but carried anyway. Out here, unexpected visitors didn't just drop by. Out here, the back door was for family and desperation. The knock came again. 3 quick taps, then silence. He moved forward slowly, boots squelching in mud, until he could see the back door. The kitchen light inside cast a weak yellow glow through the window, just bright enough to reveal a silhouette on the small concrete stoop. A woman. Lucas's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed wrong. You didn't answer unexpected knocks at 11 o'clock at night when you had a daughter sleeping inside. You didn't open doors to strangers when you were the only thing standing between your child and whatever darkness the world wanted to serve up. But something in the way the silhouette stood, shoulders curved inward, head slightly bowed, absolutely still except for the visible shaking, made him hesitate. He stepped closer, and the motion finally triggered the sensor light that had been playing dead. Sudden brightness flooded the small concrete pad, and Lucas got his first real look at the woman on his doorstep. Early 40s, maybe. Dark hair plastered to her skull by rain he hadn't realized had started falling. A coat that might have cost more than his truck, now soaked through and splattered with mud from the knees down. Her face was the kind of beautiful that came with maintenance, the sort of polished, intentional attractiveness that spoke of money and attention and a life lived in front of mirrors. But her eyes. God, her eyes. They were wide and dark and filled with something Lucas recognized because he'd seen it in his own reflection often enough. The specific exhaustion that came from running out of places to hide. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice cracked on both words. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. My car, I walked for miles, and yours was the first light I saw, and my phone is dead, and I just—" She stopped, swaying slightly. One hand braced against the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Lucas didn't move. Couldn't. Every rule he'd built for the last 4 years screamed at him to send her away, to call someone, to do anything except what every human instinct was begging him to do. "Please," she whispered, "I just need to call someone. That's all. Just one phone call." The wind picked up, driving rain at an angle that caught them both. The woman flinched, wrapping her arms around herself, and Lucas saw her hands were shaking so badly she could barely maintain her grip on her own elbows. He thought of Maya, asleep in her room with the nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. He thought of locks and deadbolts and the kind of caution that kept small families safe. He thought of his wife, who died because life didn't care about caution, who taught him that safety was a story you told yourself until the universe decided to tell a different one. "How far did you walk?" he heard himself ask. The woman's eyes filled with something that might have been relief or might have been tears. "I don't know. Miles. The road turned into gravel, and then the gravel turned into mud, and I thought I could find a house. But there was nothing, just trees, and then I saw your light. Your car broke down." "Yes." "Where?" "I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to the roads. I just kept driving, and then it started making this sound, and I pulled over, and when I tried to start it again—" Her voice broke completely. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for coming to your door like this. I just didn't know what else to do." Lucas studied her face, looking for tells. His grandfather had been a cop, had taught him to read people the way some folks read books. "Look at the hands," he'd said. "Hands tell you what the mouth is trying to hide." This woman's hands weren't hiding anything. They were shaking with cold and fear and something deeper, something that looked like desperation that had finally found a foothold and couldn't decide whether to climb or fall. He was going to regret this. He already knew it, standing there in the rain with water running down the back of his neck, his daughter asleep inside, his life carefully arranged to avoid exactly this kind of complication. But he stepped aside anyway. "Come in," Lucas said, but quietly. "My daughter's asleep." Tea. The woman stood in his kitchen like an artifact from another world. Lucas watched her take in the space, the chipped Formica counters, the linoleum floor with the crack that ran from the sink to the refrigerator, the table built from lumber scraps and held together with screws he'd salvaged from a demolished barn. Her gaze landed on Maya's drawings magneted to the fridge, a gallery of stick figures and houses with smoke curling from chimneys, and something in her expression softened. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the mismatched chairs. "I'll get you something warm." She sat slowly, carefully, like someone who'd forgotten how furniture worked. Water dripped from her coat onto the floor, pooling around the chair legs. Up close, Lucas could see the coat was designer. Something Italian, probably, with subtle stitching and fabric that had cost more per yard than he made in a month. The mud had ruined it. So had the rain. She didn't seem to notice or care. He filled the electric kettle and pulled a mug from the cabinet, one of the good ones, from the set his wife had insisted they register for when they got married. They'd gotten 12, he'd broken 4, 8 left, each one a small monument to the life he'd expected to live. "Tea, okay?" he asked. "Or I've got instant coffee." "Tea is fine. Thank you." Her voice was different now, stripped of the desperation that had colored it outside. Quieter, more controlled, the kind of voice that came from years of practice at holding yourself together when everything wanted to fall apart. Lucas dropped a tea bag into the mug and leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting for the kettle to boil. The woman sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing in particular. Her hair was starting to dry in dark waves that framed a face constructed of careful angles, high cheekbones, a narrow nose, lips pressed into a line that suggested she was still deciding whether breaking down was allowed. "I'm Lucas," he said finally, because the silence was starting to feel aggressive. She looked up, and for a second he saw her decide whether to lie. Then something shifted in her expression, and she said, "Evelyn? That your real name?" A ghost of a smile. "Yes." "Your car," Lucas said. "How far back is it?" "I'm not sure. I wasn't keeping track. Maybe 3 miles? 4? What happened to it?" "It just stopped. I'm not good with mechanical things. It started making noise, and I pulled over, and when I tried to start it again, nothing happened." Lucas nodded. The kettle clicked off, and he poured water over the tea bag, watching it steep from pale yellow to amber. He added a spoon of honey from the jar Maya had helped him buy at the farmer's market, stirring slowly. "No cell service out here," he said, sliding the mug across the table. "Landline's dead too. Storm last week took out the phone lines, and the company said they'd fix it when they got around to it." Evelyn wrapped both hands around the mug, absorbing the heat. "So I can't call anyone?" "Not tonight." "What about your phone?" "Don't have one." She looked at him like he'd claimed not to have electricity. "Everyone has a phone." "I don't." It wasn't entirely true. He had an old flip phone in a drawer somewhere, a prepaid thing he kept charged for emergencies. But something about Evelyn's desperation, the way she'd materialized out of the rain like she was running from something specific, made him cautious about offering easy exits. "In the morning," Lucas said, "I can drive you back to your car. Take a look at it. If it's something simple, I might be able to fix it. If not, I can drive you into town, and you can call whoever you need to call from there." Evelyn stared into her tea like it held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. "That's very kind of you. It's practical. You can't walk out of here in the dark, and I'm not leaving my daughter to drive you anywhere tonight." "I understand." "Guest room's upstairs. It's small, but the bed's decent. Bathroom's across the hall. I'll get you some towels." Evelyn looked up sharply. "You're letting me stay?" Lucas heard the surprise in her voice, the undertone of something else, suspicion maybe, or the wariness that came from learning that kindness usually had conditions attached. "Unless you'd rather sleep in the mud," he said. "Your call. I don't want to impose." "You already did that when you knocked on my door at 11 at night. Might as well see it through." That earned him another ghost smile, there and gone in the space of a breath. Evelyn took a sip of tea, then set the mug down carefully, like she was afraid it might break. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Really? Thank you," Lucas shrugged. "Don't thank me yet. Guest room mattress has a spring that tries to murder you around 3 a.m. He left her sitting in the kitchen and climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor, where Maya's bedroom door was open just wide enough to let the hallway light reach her bed. He could hear her breathing, slow and steady, the sound that had become his anchor in the years since Sarah died. The guest room was at the end of the hall, barely bigger than a closet. A twin bed with a quilted comforter his mother-in-law had made, a nightstand with a lamp that worked half the time, a window that looked out over the forest, currently black except for the occasional sweep of wind-bent branches. Lucas pulled towels from the bathroom closet and set them on the bed, then stood in the doorway for a long moment, listening to the house settle around him. This was a mistake. He knew it the way you knew rain was coming, not from any evidence you could point to, but from the weight of the air, the way the world felt before it changed. But the knock had already happened. The door had already opened. And somewhere downstairs, a woman who looked like she'd walked through hell in designer shoes was sitting in his kitchen, trying to remember how to hold a mug without shaking. Lucas headed back downstairs to find Evelyn still at the table, but now she was looking at the drawings on the fridge again. "Your daughter," she said. "How old?" 7. What's her name? Maya. Evelyn nodded slowly. She draws beautifully. All those houses with the smoke. She must feel very safe here. Something in Lucas's chest tightened. I try. That's more than most people do. The way she said it, flat, certain, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized, made Lucas study her more carefully. The expensive coat, the polished appearance despite the mud and rain, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from surviving rather than living. Who are you running from? He asked. Evelyn's hands went still on the mug. What makes you think I'm running from someone? Because people who are running to something don't knock on strangers' doors at midnight. They have destinations, plans. You've got the look of someone who just picked a direction and drove until the car gave up. For a long moment, Evelyn didn't answer. Then she lifted the mug to her lips, took a slow sip, and set it back down with the kind of precision that spoke of practiced control. My husband, she said finally. I'm running from my husband. Lucas waited. His name is Thomas More. Maybe you've heard of him. Lucas shook his head. Should I have? Probably not. Tech executive, very successful, very powerful. She said the words like they tasted bitter. Very good at making sure things go exactly the way he wants them to go. And you don't want to go the way he wants anymore. No. The word came out sharp, definitive. No, I don't. So you left. So I left. Evelyn laughed, but there was no humor in it. I got in my car this morning and just started driving. No plan, no destination, just away, as far away as I could get before... She stopped, pressing her lips together like she'd almost said too much. Before he found you, Lucas finished. Yes. Does he know where you are? No. I turned my phone off hours ago, pulled the battery. I've seen enough movies to know how this works. Lucas almost smiled at that. Movies aren't real life. No, Evelyn said softly. Real life is much worse. The kettle clicked off again. Lucas hadn't realized he'd refilled it, and the sudden silence felt heavy. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming against the windows in steady rhythm. Inside, the kitchen light flickered once, threatening to give up entirely before steadying. The guest room's ready, Lucas said. Towels are on the bed. If you need anything else... Why are you helping me? The question stopped him cold. Evelyn was looking at him now with those dark, exhausted eyes, and Lucas saw the real question underneath. What do you want from me? Because you knocked, he said simply. And because I've got a daughter sleeping upstairs who's going to wake up in the morning and ask me what I did when someone needed help. That's it? That's it. Evelyn studied his face like she was looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden cost. Lucas let her look. He'd learned a long time ago that you couldn't convince people of your intentions. You could only be consistent and wait for them to decide. Finally, Evelyn stood, pushing the chair back with a scrape that sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. Thank you, she said again, for the tea, for the room, for not asking too many questions. I asked plenty of questions. You didn't ask the ones that matter. Lucas tilted his head. What questions matter? Evelyn picked up her mug, carried it to the sink, and rinsed it with the kind of automatic care that spoke of years of practiced domesticity. When she turned back, her expression had shifted into something harder, more guarded. Whether I deserve any of this, she said quietly, whether I'm worth the trouble, whether saving me is going to cost you more than you're willing to pay. Those aren't my questions to ask. Maybe they should be. Lucas held her gaze. You knocked on my door in the middle of a rainstorm, soaking wet and scared. I'm giving you a bed for the night and a ride in the morning. That's not saving you. That's basic decency. And if you think that comes with conditions, then the people in your life have been teaching you the wrong lessons. Something flickered across Evelyn's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. She opened her mouth like she wanted to respond, then closed it again, shaking her head slightly. Good night, Lucas, she said instead. Good night, Evelyn. He watched her climb the stairs, her footsteps soft on the worn carpet runner, until she disappeared into the darkness of the second-floor hallway. A moment later, he heard the guest room door close with a quiet click. Lucas stood alone in his kitchen, listening to rain and wind and the settling creaks of a house that had sheltered broken things long before he'd arrived. He thought about strangers and safety, and the way Maya would look at him tomorrow morning when she discovered they had a guest. He thought about Sarah, who'd believed in open doors and second chances, who'd made him promise to raise their daughter in a world where kindness wasn't conditional. And he thought about the woman upstairs, who'd walked miles through rain and darkness to knock on the wrong door at exactly the right time. Outside, the storm pressed against the windows like it was testing the strength of glass and frame and the decisions made by people too tired to know better. Lucas turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs to his own room, where sleep would be a long time coming, and tomorrow was already assembling itself into questions he didn't have answers for. Maya discovered their guest at 6:47 a.m. Lucas heard her footsteps on the stairs, the particular rhythm that meant she was being careful, trying not to wake him, and then the sudden stop, the silence that stretched just long enough to make him open his eyes. "Daddy?" Her voice came from the hallway, pitched quiet but urgent. Lucas rolled out of bed, pulling on yesterday's jeans, and opened his door to find Maya standing outside the guest room in her pajamas decorated with planets and stars. "There's a lady," Maya whispered, pointing at the closed door, "in the guest room." "I know, sweetheart." Maya's eyes went wide. "You know?" "She knocked on our door last night. Her car broke down and she needed help." "So you let her stay?" "I let her stay." Maya processed this information with the serious consideration she applied to all new developments. At 7, she was already more practical than Lucas had been at twice her age. A gift from Sarah, who'd believed in teaching their daughter to think before she felt, to measure before she jumped. "Is she nice?" Maya asked. "I think so." "Is she safe?" Lucas crouched down so they were eye level. "What do you mean?" "You always say we don't let strangers in, because we have to be safe." "That's true." "But you let her in." "I did." "Why?" It was the question Lucas had been asking himself for the last 7 hours, lying in bed while rain hammered the roof and sleep stayed just out of reach. "Because sometimes," he said carefully, "the rules we make to keep us safe have to bend when someone needs help. And last night that lady needed help." Maya frowned, thinking, "But what if she's dangerous?" "Do you think she's dangerous?" "I haven't met her yet." "Fair point." Lucas straightened, ruffling Maya's hair. "Tell you what, when she wakes up, you can meet her. And if your instincts tell you something's wrong, you let me know. Deal?" "Deal." Maya paused. "What are instincts?" "The feeling in your stomach when something's not right. The little voice that tells you to pay attention. Like when Tommy Berkshire tried to pet that raccoon at school?" Lucas smiled. "Exactly like that." "Okay." Maya headed for the stairs, then stopped and turned back. "Daddy, are we going to help her fix her car?" "If we can." "Good, because that's what Mom would have wanted." The words hit Lucas square in the chest, stealing his breath for a moment. Maya said them casually, matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. She did that sometimes, referenced Sarah without warning, dropping memories into conversation like stones into still water. "Yeah," Lucas managed. "Yeah, it is." Maya nodded and disappeared down the stairs, her footsteps already shifting from careful to normal as she headed for the kitchen. Lucas stood in the hallway, listening to her move around below. Cabinet doors opening and closing, the clink of a bowl and spoon, the sound of cereal hitting ceramic. Behind him, the guest room door stayed closed. Evelyn didn't emerge until almost 9. Lucas had been working in the kitchen, Maya at the table with her coloring books, when he heard the stairs creak. Maya looked up immediately, her crayon frozen mid-stroke. Evelyn appeared in the doorway looking significantly more put together than she had the night before. Her hair was still damp but combed, her face washed clean of yesterday's desperation. She'd changed out of the ruined coat into... Lucas frowned. She was wearing the same clothes as last night, same dark pants, same white blouse. Both still showed signs of mud and rain despite obvious attempts to clean them. "Good morning," Evelyn said softly. "Morning," Lucas replied. "Coffee? Please, if it's not too much trouble." "It's instant. Hope that's okay." Instant is perfect. Lucas poured water from the kettle into a mug, stirred in a spoonful of crystals, and slid it across the counter. Evelyn took it with both hands, inhaling the steam like it was medicine. Maya had gone very still, her crayon still hovering above the picture of what might have been a horse, or might have been a very ambitious dog. "Maya," Lucas said gently, "this is Evelyn. Evelyn, this is my daughter, Maya." Evelyn set down her coffee and moved to the table slowly, like she was approaching something fragile. "Hello, Maya," she said. "It's very nice to meet you." Maya studied Evelyn with the kind of frank, unblinking assessment that only children could pull off without seeming rude. "You knocked on our door in the middle of the night," Maya said. "I did." "Because your car broke." "Yes." "Were you scared?" Evelyn sat down in the chair across from Maya, moving carefully, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. "I was very scared," she said. "I didn't know where I was, and it was dark, and I didn't know if anyone would help me." Maya considered this. "But Daddy helped you." "He did. Your daddy is very kind." "He's the kindest daddy in the whole world," Maya said with absolute certainty. "And he's going to fix your car. He fixes everything." Evelyn glanced at Lucas, something unreadable in her expression. "Does he?" "Yep. He fixed my bike when the chain fell off, and he fixed the dishwasher when it made that scary noise, and he fixed the shed door when the wind broke it." Maya paused. "He couldn't fix Mommy, though. Nobody could fix Mommy." The silence that followed was absolute. Lucas felt his throat close. Evelyn's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to name. Maya went back to coloring, having delivered the statement with the same casual tone she'd used to list her father's accomplishments. "Maya," Lucas said quietly, "why don't you go get dressed? We need to drive Evelyn back to her car soon." "Can I come?" "If you want." "I want." Maya gathered her crayons with practiced efficiency, dumping them into their box. "I'm going to wear my overalls, the ones with all the pockets." She bounded upstairs, leaving Lucas and Evelyn alone in the kitchen, with Maya's words still hanging in the air like smoke. "I'm sorry," Lucas said. "She doesn't have much of a filter." "Don't apologize." Evelyn's voice was rough. "How long ago?" 4 years. Car accident. She was coming home from the grocery store, and someone ran a red light." "I'm so sorry." Lucas shrugged, the gesture feeling inadequate. "Yeah, me too." Evelyn wrapped her hands around her mug again, staring into the dark liquid. "It must be hard, raising her alone. Some days harder than others. But you're doing it. Don't have much choice." "Everyone has a choice," Evelyn said softly. "Some of us just take longer to make it." Lucas wanted to ask what she meant, but Maya's footsteps were already thundering back down the stairs, and the moment passed. The walk back to Evelyn's car took 43 minutes. Lucas drove his truck, a 1995 Ford F-150 that burned oil and complained about third gear, but started every time he needed it to. Maya sat between him and Evelyn, providing running commentary on everything they passed: the big rock that looked like a sleeping bear, the tree where she'd once seen a bald eagle, the spot where Daddy had to stop and help a turtle cross the road. Evelyn listened to all of it with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions that made Maya light up. What kind of turtle? How big was the eagle? Did the rock really look like a bear, or did you have to use your imagination? Lucas found himself stealing glances at Evelyn when he thought she wasn't looking. In daylight, she looked both more and less fragile than she had the night before. The fear was buried deeper, but the exhaustion was clearer. Written in the shadows under her eyes, the way she held herself carefully, like sudden movements might cause something to crack. "There," Evelyn said suddenly, pointing ahead. "That's it." The car sat on the shoulder where the paved road turned to gravel, a sleek silver sedan that looked painfully out of place among the trees and mud. A BMW, Lucas noted. Maybe 3 years old, easily worth more than everything he owned combined. He pulled up behind it and killed the engine. "Maya, stay in the truck. But I want to help." "You can help by staying safe. Deal?" Maya sighed dramatically, but nodded. "Deal." Lucas and Evelyn climbed out into morning that was cold and bright. The rain from last night replaced by the kind of sharp clarity that came after a storm. The forest smelled like wet earth and pine needles and the promise of winter. Evelyn's car was exactly as she'd described, abandoned, mud-splattered, sitting at an angle that suggested she'd pulled over in a hurry. Lucas circled it slowly, checking the tires, peering through the windows. "Keys?" he asked. Evelyn produced them from her pocket and handed them over. Lucas unlocked the driver's side door and slid behind the wheel, adjusting the seat that Evelyn had left pushed all the way forward. The interior smelled like leather and expensive perfume, and the particular desperation of someone who'd left in a hurry. He turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. The dashboard stayed dark, the engine completely silent. Lucas popped the hood and climbed back out, gesturing for Evelyn to follow. Under the hood, everything looked pristine, too pristine, like the car had been serviced regularly by people who charged by the hour and wore uniforms. "When's the last time you had the battery checked?" he asked. "I don't know. Thomas handles all of that." "Thomas being your husband?" "Yes." Lucas studied the battery connections, then reached down and wiggled one of the terminals. It moved more than it should have. "Your battery cable's loose," he said. "Probably vibrated free on the rough road. Simple fix." He went back to his truck and grabbed his toolbox, returning with a wrench. 30 seconds of work, and the connection was tight again. "Try it now." Evelyn slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine purred to life like it had never considered giving up. "That's it?" she asked. "That's all it was?" "That's all it was." Evelyn sat behind the wheel, staring at the dashboard like it had personally betrayed her. "I walked 4 miles in the rain because of a loose battery cable." "Could have been worse." "How?" "Could have been the transmission." That earned him a real smile. Small, but genuine. Evelyn killed the engine and climbed out, closing the door with a soft click. "Thank you," she said. "Really, thank you for everything. The room, the help, the—" She gestured vaguely at the car. "All of it." "You're welcome. I should go. I've imposed enough." Lucas nodded, but something in his chest twisted. It was the same feeling he'd had when Maya started kindergarten, watching her walk through those doors into a world he couldn't control or protect her from. "Where are you going?" he asked. Evelyn's smile faded. "I don't know." "Back to Seattle?" "No, definitely not Seattle." "Then where?" "I'll figure it out." She pulled her coat tighter, even though the morning wasn't that cold. "Thank you again, Lucas. You didn't have to help me, but you did. That matters." She moved toward her car, and Lucas heard himself say, "Wait." Evelyn turned. "You have my address," Lucas said. "From last night. If you need anything, if you need somewhere to go, you know where to find me." Evelyn's expression did something complicated. "I can't ask you for anything else." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Why?" It was the second time she'd asked him that. Lucas thought about his daughter in the truck, watching them through the windshield. He thought about Sarah, who'd never met a stranger she didn't think deserved kindness. He thought about the woman in front of him, who looked like she'd forgotten what kindness without conditions even looked like. "Because everyone needs a safe place to land," he said. "And right now, you look like you're still falling." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just remember the address." She nodded once, quick and sharp, like she was afraid more movement might break her resolve. Then she climbed into her car, started the engine, and pulled back onto the gravel road. Lucas watched her go, the silver BMW disappearing around a bend in the road, until all that was left was the sound of gravel crunching and then silence. "Is she coming back?" Maya asked when Lucas climbed back into the truck. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope she does. I liked her." "Yeah," Lucas said, starting the engine. "Me too." They drove home in comfortable silence, Maya humming a song she'd learned at school, Lucas thinking about battery cables and second chances and the way Evelyn's hands had shaken when she'd taken the keys from him. The cottage was exactly as they'd left it when they got back. Porch still sagging, window still cracked, roof still threatening to betray them when the next storm rolled in. but it looked different somehow in the morning light, less like a monument to survival and more like what it actually was, a place where broken things could rest, even if only for a night. Lucas helped Maya out of the truck and watched her run toward the house, her overalls decorated with mud from where she'd knelt to examine an interesting rock on the drive home. Behind him, the road stretched empty in both directions, and the forest held its breath like it was waiting to see what happened next. Inside, the guest room was neat and tidy, the bed made with the kind of precision that spoke of years of practice. The towels were folded and stacked on the nightstand. The only sign anyone had been there at all was a note, written on the back of a grocery receipt in careful handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness looks like." Lucas held the note for a long time, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket, where it rested against his heart like a promise neither of them had made yet, but both of them might need to keep. 3 days passed before Evelyn came back. Lucas was in the shed when he heard the car, the familiar purr of an expensive engine cutting through the afternoon quiet. He set down the alternator he'd been rebuilding and wiped his hands, stepping into the doorway just as the silver BMW rolled to a stop in front of the house. Maya saw it first. She'd been playing in the yard building what she called a fairy village out of sticks and moss, and her head snapped up at the sound. "Daddy!" she shouted, already running. "It's Evelyn! She came back!" Lucas walked slowly across the yard, watching as Evelyn climbed out of the car. She looked different than she had 3 days ago, still polished, still careful, but something in her posture had changed. She stood straighter, moved with more purpose, like she'd made a decision and was committed to seeing it through. "Hi," she said when he reached her. "Hi yourself." Maya crashed into Evelyn's legs with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could manage, wrapping her arms around Evelyn's waist. "You came back. I told Daddy you would, but he said he didn't know, but I knew." Evelyn's hands hovered uncertainly for a moment before settling on Maya's shoulders. "I hope it's okay. I should have called, but we don't have a phone," Maya supplied helpfully. "Daddy says phones are for people who want to be found." Lucas shot his daughter a look. "Maya, why don't you go wash up? It's almost lunchtime." "Can Evelyn stay for lunch?" "That's up to Evelyn." Maya looked up at Evelyn with eyes that could have convinced stone to bleed. "Will you, please? Daddy makes really good grilled cheese. It's the only thing he makes really good, but it's really, really good." Evelyn laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face into something younger, lighter. "I would love to stay for lunch." "Yes." Maya released Evelyn and sprinted for the house, leaving them alone in the yard. Lucas studied Evelyn in the afternoon light. She was wearing jeans today, actual jeans, paired with a sweater that looked soft and expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone trying to remember how to be casual, like she'd rehearsed the outfit in a mirror before deciding it was appropriately understated. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," Evelyn said quietly. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know. I thought maybe you'd think I was crazy, showing up again after—" She gestured vaguely. "After everything." "Are you? Crazy?" "Probably." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "But I couldn't stop thinking about this place, about Maya, about the way you didn't ask me for anything except to be quiet because your daughter was sleeping. And I thought—" She stopped, looking at the cottage. "I thought maybe I could visit, if that's okay, if I'm not imposing." "You're not imposing. Are you sure? Because I can go. I don't want to—" "Evelyn." Lucas waited until she looked at him. "You're not imposing. Come inside, have lunch, stay as long as you want." Something in her shoulders relaxed. "Okay, thank you." They walked toward the house together, and Lucas noticed she moved differently on the property now, less like an intruder, more like someone testing whether they might belong. Inside, Maya had already set the table with the kind of chaotic enthusiasm that meant 3 forks per plate and napkins folded into shapes that defied geometry. She'd also, Lucas noticed, pulled out the good plates again, the ones from the wedding registry that usually stayed in the cabinet. "Maya, regular plates are fine." "But Evelyn's special," Maya said, like this was obvious. "Special people get special plates." Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth, and Lucas saw her eyes go bright. "Thank you, Maya. That's very thoughtful." Lucas moved to the kitchen, pulling bread and cheese from the refrigerator. The routine was familiar, comforting: butter in the pan, bread on the heat, cheese sliced thick because that's how Maya liked it. Behind him, he could hear Evelyn and Maya talking, their voices blending into the background hum of the house. "What's this drawing?" Evelyn asked. "That's our house, see? That's Daddy's shed, and that's the big tree where the swing used to be before the storm broke it. It's beautiful. You're very talented. Daddy says I get it from my mom. She used to paint. We have some of her paintings upstairs, but Daddy doesn't like to look at them too much because they make him sad happy." Lucas tensed, waiting for Evelyn's response. "Sad happy?" Evelyn asked gently. "Yeah, like when something makes you smile and cry at the same time. Daddy gets sad happy when he talks about Mom. So I don't talk about her too much, except when it's important." "That sounds very wise of you." "I'm pretty wise for 7, Maya said, matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Henderson says I'm an old soul. I don't know what that means, but it sounds nice." The sandwiches sizzled in the pan, filling the kitchen with the smell of butter and melting cheese. Lucas flipped them carefully, watching the bread turn golden, and tried not to think about how right it felt to have someone else in the house, filling the spaces that had been empty for so long. When he turned around with plates in hand, he found Evelyn and Maya sitting close together, looking at one of Maya's books about planets. Evelyn was pointing to Jupiter, saying something about storms that had been raging for hundreds of years, and Maya was listening with the kind of absolute focus she usually reserved for nature documentaries and ice cream. "Lunch," Lucas announced, setting the plates down. They ate together at the small table, Maya chattering about school and her friend Emma, who had a pet rabbit and how she wanted a pet rabbit too. But Daddy said they had to fix the fence first. Evelyn listened to all of it, asking questions that made Maya feel heard, offering observations that showed she was actually paying attention. Lucas watched them interact and felt something shift in his chest. Not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. The house had been so quiet for so long, just him and Maya and the ghost they'd learned to live with. Having someone else here, someone who seemed genuinely interested in his daughter's stories about rabbits and planets and the weird smell in the art room at school, made the cottage feel less like a hiding place and more like a home. "This is the best grilled cheese I've ever had," Evelyn said, and Lucas could tell she meant it. "It's butter," he said, "and good cheese. That's the secret." "Oh, the secret is Daddy makes them with love," Maya corrected. "Mrs. Henderson says food tastes better when you make it with love." "Mrs. Henderson sounds very smart," Evelyn said. "She is. She's my teacher, and she's really old, like maybe 100, but she's nice." After lunch, Maya convinced Evelyn to come see the fairy village in the yard. Lucas watched from the kitchen window as they knelt together in the dirt. Evelyn in her expensive jeans, carefully arranging moss and sticks according to Maya's exacting specifications. She didn't seem to mind the mud or the way Maya's enthusiasm occasionally led to accidental destruction of carefully constructed fairy houses. She just laughed and helped rebuild, following Maya's lead like she'd been doing this her whole life. It was different from the woman who'd knocked on his door 3 nights ago. That woman had been drowning. This woman was learning to breathe. Lucas finished washing the dishes and stepped outside, drawn by the sound of Maya's laughter. He found them constructing what appeared to be a bridge made entirely of twigs and hope. "It needs to be strong enough for the fairy queen to cross," Maya was explaining. "She's very important, so her bridge has to be perfect." "Of course," Evelyn said seriously. "We can't have the fairy queen falling into the river." "There's no river," Maya giggled. "Not yet, but fairy villages always have rivers. It's practically a law." Maya's eyes went wide. "We need to make a river." Lucas cleared his throat. "The river can wait until after you've finished your homework." Maya's face fell. "But Daddy—" "Homework first, fairy architecture second." Maya sighed with the weight of someone being asked to carry the world. "Fine, but Evelyn has to promise to come back and help with the river." Both Maya and Lucas turned to look at Evelyn, who was still kneeling in the dirt with moss on her sweater and something like joy on her face. "I promise," she said, "if your dad says it's okay." "It's okay," Lucas heard himself say. "You're welcome anytime." Maya cheered and ran for the house, leaving Lucas and Evelyn alone in the yard. Evelyn stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees with hands that were steadier than they'd been 3 days ago. "Thank you," she said, "for this, for letting me be here. You don't have to keep thanking me." "Yes, I do. You don't know what this means to me. Being somewhere I can just—" She looked at the fairy village, at the house, at the forest beyond. Be, without performing, without calculating every word and gesture, without wondering what the cost is going to be. Lucas heard the weight in her words, the years of practice at being someone other than herself. "How long were you married?" he asked. Evelyn's expression shuddered slightly. 17 years. We met at a gallery opening. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted." She paused. "I was 24 and stupid enough to believe that control looked like care." "You weren't stupid." "I was young. Same thing sometimes." Lucas gestured to the porch steps, and they sat together in the afternoon sun. The forest was quiet, except for wind in the trees and the distant call of a crow. Normal sounds, safe sounds. "When did you know?" Lucas asked. "That you needed to leave?" Evelyn was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. There wasn't one moment, it was accumulation, years of small surrenders that added up to losing myself completely. "He didn't hit me, if that's what you're wondering. Thomas is too smart for that. He just made sure every decision ran through him first. What I wore, where I went, who I saw. He called it love, called it protection. And I believed him because when you hear something enough times, it starts to sound like truth." "What changed?" "I woke up one morning and couldn't remember the last time I'd made a choice that was actually mine. Couldn't remember who I was before I became Thomas More's wife, and I realized if I didn't leave right then, I never would. I'd just keep disappearing until there was nothing left." Lucas thought about his own life, the choices he'd made after Sarah died. The cottage, the isolation, the careful construction of a world small enough to control. "Is that what brought you here?" he asked. "To the middle of nowhere?" "I wasn't trying to get anywhere specific. I just pointed the car away from Seattle and drove. When it broke down, I thought it was the universe telling me I couldn't escape, that I'd always end up stranded somewhere, helpless." She smiled faintly. "Then you fixed it with a wrench in 30 seconds, and I realized maybe I'd been telling myself the wrong story." "What story were you telling yourself?" "That I couldn't survive without Thomas, that I needed him, that leaving would mean giving up everything that made me safe." She looked at Lucas. "But you know what? I wasn't safe with him. I was just controlled. And there's a difference." Inside the house, Maya's voice drifted through the open window as she talked to herself about homework and fairy rivers and whether the fairy queen should have a castle made of acorns. "She's wonderful," Evelyn said softly. "You've done an amazing job with her." "I'm doing the best I can. Some days that feels like enough. Other days—" Lucas shrugged. "Other days I wonder what Sarah would think of the man I've become, whether she'd recognize me." "Would she?" Lucas considered the question. "I don't know. I'm not who I was when she was alive. That person died in the same accident, I think. This version," he gestured at himself, "this is what survived." "Survival counts for something." "Does it?" "Yes." Evelyn said it with conviction. "Survival counts for everything. It's the hardest thing we do, and we do it every single day without fanfare or recognition. Just waking up and choosing to keep going when everything in us wants to stop. That's heroic. That's worth celebrating." Lucas looked at her, this woman who'd walked out of a storm and into his life, and wondered if she knew she was describing herself. "How long are you planning to stay in the area?" he asked. "I don't know. I got a hotel room in Everett. It's—" She made a face. "It's a hotel room, but it's mine. My name on the reservation, my credit card, my choice to be there. That matters." "And after?" "After, I need to figure out my life. Thomas called yesterday. 37 times. I didn't answer. He sent texts too. Most of them were apologies, some were threats. All of them were attempts to pull me back into orbit." She straightened her shoulders. "But I'm not going back. Not this time. I'm done being his satellite." Does he know where you are?" "I don't think so. I've been careful, but Thomas has resources and determination. It's only a matter of time before he finds me." Lucas heard the fear underneath the words, the knowledge that freedom was still a fragile thing. "When he does," Lucas said carefully, "what are you going to do?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face him fully, and Lucas saw something new in her expression, not hope exactly, but determination. "I'm going to tell him the truth," she said, "that I want a divorce, that I'm not negotiating, that he can keep the houses and the cars and the carefully curated life we built together. I just want myself back. And if he doesn't accept that, then I'll fight. I have a son, Caleb. He's 22 in graduate school. Thomas thinks he can use him as leverage, but Caleb's known the truth for years. He's been waiting for me to be ready." Her voice cracked slightly. "He's been waiting a long time." Lucas thought about Maya, about the kind of man he wanted to be in her eyes, about the lessons children learned from watching their parents navigate impossible situations. "You're brave," he said. Evelyn shook her head. "I'm terrified." "Those aren't mutually exclusive." She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. "No, I suppose they're not." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the yard. Maya appeared in the doorway, backpack in hand, announcing that her homework was finished and could they please work on the Ferry River now. Evelyn stayed for another 2 hours, helping Maya dig a shallow trench for the river, while Lucas worked in the shed with one eye on the yard. He watched them together. Evelyn patient with Maya's changing specifications, Maya delighted with having a grown-up who took her fairy village seriously. When Evelyn finally said she needed to leave, Maya hugged her goodbye with fierce intensity. "You have to come back tomorrow," Maya said. "I can't tomorrow, sweetie. I have some things I need to take care of." "The day after tomorrow?" Evelyn looked to Lucas, who nodded. "The day after tomorrow," Evelyn agreed. "I'll bring supplies for the Fairy Queen's castle." Maya's squeal of delight could probably be heard in the next county. Lucas walked Evelyn to her car while Maya ran inside to draw plans for the castle that would require architectural supplies. In the fading light, Evelyn looked younger somehow, like the afternoon had stripped away layers of careful performance. "Thank you for today," she said. "For lunch, for letting me play in the dirt with your daughter, for not making me feel like I was intruding." "You weren't intruding." "I know, that's the miracle of it." She opened her car door, then paused. "Lucas, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you being so kind to me? And please don't say it's just basic decency. I've been around enough people to know that what you're offering goes beyond that." Lucas considered the question, looking past Evelyn to where the forest met the sky in the distance. "After Sarah died," he said slowly, "people were kind for about 2 weeks. Then they got uncomfortable with my grief. It didn't fit their timeline, didn't resolve in a way that made them feel better about the universe. So they drifted away, and I let them, because it was easier than explaining that some losses don't heal, they just become part of who you are." He looked at Evelyn. "You showed up on my doorstep running from something that tried to erase you. I know what that feels like, being erased, being told your grief or fear or pain is too much, too inconvenient, too real. So I guess I'm being kind because I know what it's like when people aren't, and I know what it means when someone sees you at your worst and doesn't turn away." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say to that." "Don't say anything. Just come back the day after tomorrow. Bring your castle supplies. Let Maya show you her entire rock collection, which she will definitely want to do. Be here." "I will," Evelyn whispered. "I promise." She got in the car and drove away slowly, like she was memorizing the way back. Lucas stood in the driveway until the taillights disappeared, then turned to find Maya watching from the window with a smile that could have powered cities. That night, after Maya was asleep, Lucas sat on the porch with a beer he wasn't really drinking and thought about the way Evelyn's hands had shaken that first night and how steady they'd been today, building fairy bridges in his yard. He thought about Sarah, who would have liked Evelyn, who would have invited her to stay for dinner and probably breakfast too, who would have seen the same thing Lucas saw, someone trying to find their way back to themselves after years of being lost. And he thought about the space in his life that had been empty for so long, and how strange it felt to have someone beginning to fill it who wasn't trying to replace what he'd lost, but just offering something different, something new. Inside, the house settled into its familiar creaks and sighs. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight, Lucas allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, kindness could be its own reward. That opening his door to a stranger might have been the first right choice he'd made in years. That some knocks, however unexpected, were meant to be answered. 2 days later, Evelyn returned with a bag full of supplies that made Maya's eyes go wide. Tiny wooden pieces that could be assembled into furniture, moss that sparkled like it had been touched by actual magic, and a miniature fairy queen figure that Maya immediately declared was perfect. They spent the afternoon in the yard, and Lucas found himself joining them more often than he stayed in the shed. There was something magnetic about watching Evelyn and Maya work together, their heads bent close over the fairy village while they debated the structural integrity of an acorn castle. The towers need to be symmetrical, Maya was saying. Otherwise, it won't look royal. What if the fairy queen doesn't care about symmetry? Evelyn asked. What if she's the kind of queen who likes things a little wild and imperfect? Maya considered this revolutionary idea. Like Daddy's hair in the morning? Evelyn laughed. Exactly like that. Hey, Lucas protested from where he was supposedly fixing the porch railing. My hair is fine. Daddy's hair looks like birds live in it, Maya announced to Evelyn with absolute authority. Friendly birds, though, Evelyn added, the kind that sing nice songs. They dissolved into giggles, and Lucas felt something warm spread through his chest. This was what had been missing. Not just another adult, but laughter that wasn't forced, joy that didn't feel guilty, connection that reminded him there was life beyond survival. Evelyn started coming by 3 or 4 times a week after that. Sometimes she'd stay for hours, helping Maya with homework or working in the yard while Lucas repaired whatever was currently broken. Other times she'd just sit on the porch with coffee, watching the forest, and breathing in a way that suggested she was still learning how. They didn't talk about Thomas much, though Lucas could see the weight of the impending divorce in the way Evelyn's shoulders tensed whenever her phone buzzed. She'd started seeing a lawyer, she told him one evening while they sat on the porch after Maya had gone to bed. A good one, recommended by a women's shelter she'd contacted for resources. He's expensive, she said, staring at her coffee, but he's dealt with cases like mine before. High net worth divorces where one party has all the power and the other is just trying to survive. What does he think your chances are? Of getting a fair settlement? Good, if I'm willing to fight. Of keeping my sanity through the process? She laughed humorlessly. Less good. You'll keep it, Lucas said with conviction. You're stronger than you think. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you chose to leave instead of staying comfortable. Because you're learning to build fairy castles with a 7-year-old instead of hiding in a hotel room. That takes strength. Evelyn looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You see me differently than I see myself. Maybe you should trust my vision more than yours. Maybe I should. The weeks slid by, marked by Evelyn's visits and Maya's growing attachment to the woman who'd become a constant presence in their lives. Halloween came and went. Evelyn helped Maya carve pumpkins and handed out candy with the enthusiasm of someone experiencing the holiday fresh. Thanksgiving approached with the kind of gentle inevitability that made Lucas realize he'd have to make a decision. He made it one afternoon while Evelyn and Maya were raking leaves into piles that Maya immediately destroyed by jumping into them. Stay for Thanksgiving, he said. Evelyn looked up from where she was helping Maya gather scattered leaves. What? Thanksgiving. It's just going to be me and Maya. We usually do something simple, turkey, mashed potatoes, pie from the store, but it would be nice to have you here, if you want. Maya stopped mid-jump. Yes, say yes, Evelyn, please. Evelyn's eyes went bright. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your family holiday. You're not intruding, Lucas said. You're invited. There's a difference. Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. I would love to, thank you. Maya cheered and went back to destroying leaf piles with renewed enthusiasm. Evelyn walked over to where Lucas stood by the porch steps, and for a moment they just looked at each other. This means a lot to me, she said quietly. More than you know. I know, Lucas said. That's why I asked. Thanksgiving arrived cold and bright, the sky scrubbed clean by a storm the night before. Evelyn showed up early with wine she'd clearly spent too much money on, and flowers that Maya insisted on arranging in every available container until the kitchen looked like a garden had exploded. They cooked together, or rather, Lucas cooked while Evelyn and Maya handled what Maya called the important jobs, like setting the table and taste testing everything. The turkey was dry because Lucas had never quite mastered cooking poultry, but the mashed potatoes were perfect, and the green beans were acceptable, and none of it mattered because they were together. They ate at the small table that barely fit 3 people, and Maya insisted they all say what they were thankful for. "I'm thankful for Evelyn," Maya announced, "and for Daddy, and for the fairy village, and for pie, which we're having after this." "I'm thankful for this house," Evelyn said, her voice thick, "and for both of you, for reminding me what home is supposed to feel like." Lucas looked at his daughter and at the woman who'd walked out of a storm into their lives and felt his throat close with emotion. "I'm thankful we answered the door," he said simply. Later, after Maya had fallen asleep on the couch mid-movie, Lucas and Evelyn sat on the porch wrapped in blankets against the November cold. The stars were sharp and bright, the kind of clarity that only came after storms. "Thomas served me papers yesterday," Evelyn said into the quiet. Lucas turned to her. "What kind of papers?" "Divorce papers. His lawyer drew them up. He's offering me a settlement, enough money to be comfortable, but only if I sign an NDA about the marriage." "About him?" She laughed bitterly. "He wants to buy my silence." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to reject it. My lawyer thinks I'm crazy, but I don't care. I'm not signing away my voice. Not again." She looked at Lucas. "That's going to make things ugly." "How ugly?" "Very. Thomas doesn't lose. He'll fight me on everything, assets, reputation, whatever he can use as leverage. My lawyer says I should prepare for a battle that could take years." Lucas absorbed this. "And you're ready for that?" "No," Evelyn said honestly. "I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering who I could have been if I'd just been brave enough to fight." She turned to look at him fully, and in the porch light, Lucas could see tears tracking down her face. "I need you to know something," she said. "Coming here, being with you and Maya, it's not about hiding from Thomas or running from my problems. It's about remembering who I am, about having a place where I can just be Evelyn, not Thomas More's wife or his victim or his opponent. Just me." "You are just you here," Lucas said. "That's all you've ever been." Evelyn reached over and took his hand, her fingers cold but steady. "Thank you. For everything. For the door, for the fairy village, for the Thanksgiving that felt like family, for not expecting me to be anything other than what I am." Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "That's what friends do." "Is that what we are? Friends?" Lucas considered the question, considered the way his heart had started beating differently when he heard her car in the driveway, the way Maya lit up at the mention of Evelyn's name, the way the house felt less like a shelter and more like a home when Evelyn was in it. "Yeah," he said, though the word felt insufficient. "Friends." Evelyn smiled, and even with tears on her face, it was the most beautiful thing Lucas had seen in years. "Good," she said. "I could use a friend." They sat together in the cold, holding hands like lifelines, while inside Maya dreamed and the house settled around them, and somewhere in Seattle, a man Lucas had never met prepared for a war that was already lost. Because Evelyn had already won the only battle that mattered. She'd found herself again, and she wasn't letting go. The photography exhibition had been Evelyn's idea, born during one of those long afternoons on Lucas's porch when the December light turned everything golden and possible. "I used to take pictures," she'd said, almost shyly, like admitting to a secret. "Before Thomas. I had a show once in a small gallery in Portland. He came to the opening and told me I had talent, and I believed him because back then I didn't know that was how it started. With compliments that felt like love, but were really just the foundation for a cage." Maya had been building a snowman in the yard, her laughter carrying across the cold air, and Lucas had watched Evelyn's face transform as she talked about apertures and light, and the way a camera could capture truth that eyes missed. Why did you stop? He'd asked. Thomas said it was a hobby, not a career, that his work was important and mine was… She'd paused, choosing her words carefully. Indulgent. He needed me available for dinners and events and the performance of being Mrs. Thomas More. Photography didn't fit into that schedule. And now? Evelyn had looked at him with something fierce in her eyes. Now I don't have a schedule. Now I can do whatever I want. 3 weeks later, she'd rented a small community space in Everett for a weekend exhibition. Nothing fancy, just a room with good light and wall space for the photographs she'd been taking since leaving Thomas. Images of the forest around Lucas's cottage, of Maya's fairy village, of morning light through cracked windows and evening shadows across uneven floors. Pictures that told the story of rebuilding, of finding beauty in imperfection, of learning to see herself clearly again. Lucas had offered to help with the setup, which was how he found himself on a Saturday morning in mid-December, hanging photographs on temporary walls while Evelyn directed with the kind of focused intensity he'd come to recognize as her working state. "A little to the left," she said, studying a print of the cottage at dawn. "No, too much. Back to the right. There. Perfect." Lucas stepped back, admiring the image. She'd captured something essential about the place he called home, the way it sat quiet and solid against the forest, weathered but enduring, imperfect but real. "You're good at this," he said. "I forgot how much I loved it." Evelyn moved to the next frame, adjusting its position with careful hands. "When I'm behind the camera, I'm completely present. Nothing else exists except the image I'm trying to capture. It's the only time my brain stops calculating risk and just," she gestured, searching for words, "breathes." Maya was in the corner of the room, appointed as the official quality control inspector, which mostly meant she wandered around announcing which pictures were her favorites and why. Currently, she was standing in front of a close-up of ice crystals on a window, her nose inches from the glass. "This one looks like magic," she declared. "Like if you looked really close, you'd see tiny ice fairies living inside." Evelyn smiled. "I like that interpretation better than mine. What was yours?" "I was thinking about fragility, about how something so beautiful can disappear the moment the temperature changes." Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to all of life's big questions. "But new ice can grow back. That's not fragile, that's tough." Lucas caught Evelyn's eye and saw his own thought reflected there. That sometimes 7-year-olds understood things better than adults who'd spent years learning the wrong lessons. They worked through the morning, hanging the last of the photographs and arranging the small table where Evelyn would sit during the exhibition. She'd printed business cards, simple things with her name and email address, and seeing them stacked neatly on the table made something real shift in Lucas's chest. This was Evelyn claiming space in the world again, announcing her presence, refusing to stay invisible. Around noon, Lucas's phone buzzed, the prepaid one he'd finally started carrying again because Evelyn needed a way to reach him. He pulled it from his pocket and saw her name on the screen, which didn't make sense because she was standing 10 feet away. Then he realized it wasn't a text. It was a photo she'd sent earlier that morning before they'd left for the setup. A picture of him and Maya at the kitchen table, both of them bent over one of Maya's drawings, early light streaming through the window behind them. He hadn't known she'd taken it. "When did you…" he started. "Twitch. This morning. You were showing Maya how to draw perspective, and the light was perfect, and you both looked so…" Evelyn stopped, her voice catching. "You looked like proof that good things still exist in the world." Lucas stared at the image. He looked different than he remembered, less worn down, more present. And Maya looked happy in a way that went beyond her usual cheerfulness, like she'd found something she'd been missing without knowing to look for it. "Can I use it?" Evelyn asked. "In the show?" "I should have asked before I took it. I'm sorry. I just…" "Use it," Lucas said. "I trust your vision." Something in Evelyn's expression shifted, softened. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's said to me in years." Before Lucas could respond, the door to the exhibition space opened and a man stepped inside. Early 50s, expensive suit, the kind of confident posture that came from never being told no. Lucas watched Evelyn's entire body go rigid, watched her hands clench into fists at her sides, watched the color drain from her face. "Hello, Evelyn," the man said. "Quite the little project you have here." Thomas More looked exactly like Lucas had imagined. Polished, powerful, the kind of handsome that came from money and maintenance. But there was something cold in his eyes. Something that reminded Lucas of predators sizing up prey. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn's voice was steady, but Lucas could hear the tremor underneath. "I came to see my wife's art show." "Is that not allowed?" Thomas moved further into the room, taking in the photographs with an expression that managed to be both dismissive and possessive. "Though I have to say, I'm disappointed. All this time and energy spent on hobby photography when we have real matters to discuss." "We have nothing to discuss. My lawyer's handling everything." "Your lawyer?" Thomas laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. "The one billing you $300 an hour to drag out a process that could be resolved in a simple conversation? Come home, Evelyn. Sign the papers. Take the settlement. Stop embarrassing both of us." Maya had gone very quiet in the corner, her eyes wide. Lucas moved toward her instinctively, putting himself between his daughter and whatever ugly thing was about to happen. "I'm not signing anything," Evelyn said. Her hands were shaking now, but her voice had gained strength. "I told you that. I told your lawyer that. I'm not accepting your terms." "Our terms. This is a marriage, Evelyn, a partnership. You don't get to unilaterally decide it's over." "I absolutely do. That's exactly what divorce means." Thomas's expression hardened. "You really want to do this the hard way? Do you have any idea what I can do to you in court? The lawyers I can afford versus whatever cut-rate attorney you found in a phone book? I will destroy you, Evelyn. I will make sure you leave this marriage with nothing but the clothes on your back." "Then I'll leave with nothing." Evelyn's voice rang clear across the space. "I don't care about the money or the houses or any of it. I care about being free of you, and that's not negotiable." Lucas watched Thomas's face cycle through emotions. Surprise, anger, calculation. Then his gaze landed on Lucas, really seeing him for the first time. "And who's this?" Thomas asked, his tone shifting into something uglier. "The local handyman? Is this what you left me for, Evelyn? Some backwoods mechanic who can barely keep his own porch from falling apart?" "Leave him out of this," Evelyn said sharply. "Why? He's clearly part of this. What's the arrangement here? You slumming it in the woods while you figure out how to take me for everything I'm worth? Using this poor fool and his daughter as props in your performance of independence?" Lucas felt anger rise in his chest, hot and immediate. He started forward, but Evelyn held up a hand, stopping him. "Lucas has been nothing but kind to me," she said, and there was steel in her voice now, "which is more than I can say for you. He gave me shelter when I needed it, friendship when I was alone, and space to remember who I am without someone telling me who I should be. That's not an arrangement. That's called being a decent human being. You should try it sometime." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Careful, Evelyn. You're starting to sound hysterical. We both know how that looks to judges." "I'm not hysterical. I'm done. There's a difference." "Are you?" Thomas moved closer, invading Evelyn's space with the kind of deliberate intimidation that made Lucas's hands curl into fists. "Because from where I'm standing, you look scared. You look like a woman who's made a series of terrible decisions and is just now realizing the consequences. You left a marriage to a successful, respected businessman to play house with." He gestured dismissively at Lucas. "Whatever this is, how do you think that's going to play in court?" "I think," Evelyn said, her voice shaking now, but not backing down, "that the truth is going to come out. About the isolation, the control, the way you monitored every phone call and every credit card purchase, the way you convinced me I was too fragile to make my own decisions, too unstable to have my own friends, too inadequate to exist without your constant supervision. That's the story my lawyer is going to tell. And I don't care how expensive your attorneys are. That's a hard story to spin." Something dangerous flashed across Thomas's face. "You have no idea what you're starting." "Yes, I do, and I'm starting it anyway." For a long moment, Thomas just stared at her. Then his gaze shifted to the photographs on the walls, and something like contempt settled over his features. "This is pathetic," he said. "All of this. The pictures, the little community space, the fantasy that you can build a life without me. You'll come crawling back, Evelyn. You always do. And when you do, the settlement offer will be off the table. You'll get whatever I decide to give you, and you'll be grateful for it." Get out, Evelyn said quietly. Excuse me? Get out. This is my exhibition, my space. You're not welcome here. Thomas laughed. You don't get to tell me, actually, she does. Lucas stepped forward, keeping his voice level, but letting Thomas hear the warning underneath. This space is rented in her name. You're trespassing, and if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll be happy to help you find the door. Thomas looked Lucas up and down with naked contempt. You think you're protecting her? You're nothing. A broke mechanic in the middle of nowhere raising someone else's kid in a house that's falling apart. What exactly do you think you can offer my wife? I'm not your wife, Evelyn said, and her voice was stronger now. Not anymore. Not where it counts. We're still legally married. A technicality that my lawyer is working to correct. Thomas's expression went cold, calculating. You want a war, Evelyn? I'll give you a war. I'll drag every moment of our marriage through court. Every argument, every mistake you made, every time you couldn't function without me holding you together. I'll paint you as unstable, as an unfit mother. I have one son, and he's 22 years old, Evelyn interrupted, and he knows exactly who you are. He's known for years. You have no leverage there. For the first time, Thomas looked genuinely thrown. Caleb called me yesterday. He said if I need him to testify about what he witnessed growing up in our house, he will. Gladly. Evelyn's smile was sharp. Turns out your son is braver than I've been. He's ready to tell the truth, even if it's ugly, even if it costs him. Lucas watched the calculations run behind Thomas's eyes, watched him realize he was losing control of the narrative. The man opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked toward the door with the kind of rigid dignity that came from years of practice at never showing weakness. At the door, he paused and looked back. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Evelyn replied, her voice clear and certain. It is. Thomas left, and the door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Maya's small voice broke the silence. That was the scary man. Lucas crossed to his daughter immediately, kneeling beside her. You're okay, sweetheart. He's gone. Is he going to come back? I don't know, but if he does, we'll handle it. Maya looked past Lucas to where Evelyn stood, still frozen in the center of the room. Is Evelyn okay? Lucas turned to look. Evelyn was staring at the door like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and fear and something else, something that looked like the first breath after nearly drowning. Evelyn? Lucas stood, moving toward her carefully. Talk to me. She turned to face him, and her eyes were huge and bright with unshed tears. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. Did what? I told him no. I didn't back down. I didn't apologize. I didn't try to make him feel better or manage his emotions or smooth everything over. The words tumbled out faster now, her voice rising with disbelief and wonder. I just told him the truth, and I didn't break. Then she was crying, great heaving sobs that shook her entire frame, and Lucas caught her as her legs gave out. He held her while she fell apart, while 17 years of suppressed rage and fear and grief poured out of her in waves, while Maya watched with solemn eyes, and the photographs on the walls bore silent witness to a moment that changed everything. I can't believe he came here, Evelyn gasped against Lucas's shoulder. I can't believe he thought he could just walk in and... But you stopped him, Lucas said firmly. You stood your ground. I'm terrified. Lucas, I'm so terrified of what he's going to do now. I know, but you're not alone. Evelyn pulled back enough to look at him, tears streaming down her face. How can you say that? You barely know me. This isn't your fight. You knocked on my door in the rain. You sat at my kitchen table and drank tea and helped my daughter build fairy castles. You made this house feel like a home again instead of just a place to hide. Lucas brushed tears from her cheeks with his thumb. That makes it my fight too. He meant what he said, about the court battle, about making it ugly. He has resources I can't match, connections I can't compete with. This could take years and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Then it gets worse, and we deal with it. We? Evelyn's voice broke on the word. Lucas glanced at Maya, who had crept closer and was now standing at his elbow with her small hand tucked into his. Daddy's right, Maya said solemnly. When people are scared, they need their friends. And you're our friend, so we help. Evelyn looked between them, this man and his daughter who'd somehow become central to her survival, and something in her expression cracked open entirely. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Stop saying that, Lucas said, more sharply than he intended. Stop measuring your worth by what you think you deserve. You're here, you're fighting, that's enough. Is it? It has to be. Evelyn pressed her forehead against Lucas's shoulder, taking slow, shaky breaths while she tried to pull herself back together. Maya wrapped her small arms around Evelyn's waist, and they stood there in the middle of the exhibition space. Three people who'd found each other by accident and were choosing each other on purpose. Finally, Evelyn straightened, wiping her face with the heels of her hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have fallen apart like that. You stood up to your abuser, Lucas interrupted. You're allowed to fall apart. That's what happens when you've been holding yourself together for too long. Evelyn managed a watery laugh. When did you become so wise? I've had 4 years to think about grief and survival. You pick up a few things. She looked around the room, at the photographs that told her story of transformation, at the space she'd claimed for herself. The exhibition opens in 2 hours. I need to pull myself together. Make sure everything's ready. Everything's already ready, Lucas said. The pictures are hung. The space looks beautiful. Now you just need to breathe and remember why you're doing this. Why am I doing this? Because you're Evelyn Moore and you take pictures that make ice crystals look like fairy houses. Because you're an artist who forgot she was allowed to make art. Because claiming space in the world and putting your name on business cards is an act of defiance against everyone who told you to disappear. Lucas held her gaze. Because you're done being invisible. Evelyn's breath caught, and for a moment Lucas thought she might cry again. But instead, she squared her shoulders and lifted her chin with the kind of determined grace that reminded him why he'd opened his door to her in the first place. You're right, she said. I'm done being invisible. Damn right you are. Maya tugged on Evelyn's sleeve. Can I stay for the exhibition? I want to tell people about the ice fairies. Evelyn laughed, the sound still shaky but genuine. I would be honored to have you as my assistant. What do assistants do? They stand next to the artist and look important. Think you can handle that? Maya's chest puffed with pride. I can look super important. Lucas watched them together. His daughter and this woman who'd crashed into their lives like a storm, and felt something settle into place in his chest. This was right. Not easy, not simple, but right in a way that made him believe that maybe the universe occasionally got things correct after all. The exhibition opened at 2 o'clock, and people came. Not crowds, but a steady trickle of curious locals and art enthusiasts who'd seen the flyers Evelyn had posted around Everett. They wandered through the space, studying the photographs with the kind of quiet appreciation that mattered more than effusive praise. Evelyn stood by her table, Maya at her side in a dress she'd insisted on wearing because important assistants dress nice, and answered questions about her process and inspiration. Lucas hung back, watching her transform from the terrified woman who'd faced down Thomas to someone confident and present, inhabiting her own skin without apology. An older woman with silver hair stopped in front of the photograph of Lucas and Maya at the kitchen table, the one Evelyn had taken that morning. This one, the woman said. This is my favorite. There's something about the light, the way it shows love without being sentimental. It's honest. Evelyn smiled. Thank you. That means a lot. Are these your subjects? The woman gestured to Lucas and Maya. They're my friends and my inspiration. Evelyn's eyes found Lucas across the room. They remind me what strength looks like when it's quiet instead of loud. The woman nodded knowingly. The best photographs always capture truth, even when the subjects don't know they're being truthful. You have a gift for that. After she moved on, Lucas approached the table where Maya was importantly guarding a stack of business cards. People like your pictures, Maya reported. Lots of them stopped to look at the one of our house. That's good, Evelyn said. And that lady over there said your use of natural light was exquisite. I don't know what exquisite means, but it sounds fancy. Lucas smiled. It means very beautiful. Oh, then she's right. Evelyn's pictures are exquisite. The afternoon wore on and Thomas didn't come back. Every time the door opened, Lucas saw Evelyn tense, saw her brace for confrontation. But it was always someone new, someone interested in art instead of control, and gradually her shoulders relaxed. By 4 o'clock, Evelyn had handed out most of her business cards and received 3 commissions. People wanting her to photograph their homes, their families, their lives. Small jobs, nothing that would pay the bills, but proof that her work had value beyond the walls of this temporary space. When the last visitor left, Maya immediately flopped onto the floor with the dramatic exhaustion of someone who'd worked very hard at looking important. "I'm tired," she announced. "Being an assistant is harder than it looks." "You did beautifully," Evelyn said, sitting beside her. "I couldn't have done this without you." "Really? Really, you made people smile. That's an important job." Maya beamed. "Can I be your assistant again sometime?" "Anytime you want." Lucas started taking down the photographs while Evelyn and Maya rested on the floor, both of them talking about which pictures had gotten the most attention and whether the ice fairy interpretation would catch on with the general public. As he worked, Lucas thought about Thomas's visit, about the war the man had promised. He thought about Evelyn's trembling hands and her iron voice, about the way she'd refused to back down even when everything in her was screaming to run. He thought about what it would cost to stand beside her through whatever ugly thing came next, about the risk of letting someone into his carefully constructed life when that someone came with complications and danger and a powerful man determined to destroy her. And he realized he didn't care about the cost, because some people were worth fighting for, some doors were worth answering, some storms were worth walking into because the person in the center needed to know they weren't alone. "Lucas?" Evelyn's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was standing now, Maya dozing against her shoulder with the complete trust only children could manage. "Yeah? Thank you for being here today, for..." She gestured at the room, at Maya, at everything. "For all of it. You already thanked me." "I know, but I need to say it again because I don't know if you understand what this means to me. Having someone in my corner, having people who show up, having..." Her voice caught. "Having you." Lucas set down the photograph he was holding and crossed to where she stood. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "Thomas is going to make this hard, and it's going to get ugly, and there are going to be days when you want to give up. But I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now." "Promise?" The word came out small, vulnerable, stripped of all pretense. "Promise," Lucas said. Evelyn shifted Maya's weight carefully and reached for Lucas's hand, threading their fingers together. Standing there in the fading December light, surrounded by photographs that told the story of her transformation, she finally let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth more than all the settlements and expensive lawyers in the world. She'd found people who saw her, who chose her, who stayed. And for the first time in 17 years, that felt like enough. Thomas made good on his promise. The first salvo came 3 days after the exhibition, delivered by a process server who showed up at the cottage while Lucas was teaching Maya how to change a tire on the truck. The man in the cheap suit handed Evelyn a manila envelope thick with legal documents, offered an apologetic smile, and left before she could find words to respond. Lucas watched the color drain from her face as she read, watched her hands start to shake so badly she could barely hold the papers. Maya looked between them with the kind of wide-eyed worry that made Lucas's chest tight. "Go inside, sweetheart," he told his daughter gently. "Work on your math homework. I'll be there in a minute." Maya hesitated, clearly wanting to stay, but she'd learned to trust her father's judgment. She went, casting one last worried glance at Evelyn before disappearing through the back door. "What is it?" Lucas asked, though he already knew it was nothing good. Evelyn's voice came out strangled. "He's claiming I'm unstable, that I abandoned our marriage during a mental health crisis. He's got affidavits from our marriage counselor, from his business partners, from people I thought were friends. They all say the same thing, that I've been erratic, depressed, making poor decisions." She looked up at Lucas with eyes full of horror. "He's painting me as someone who can't be trusted with her own life, let alone a fair share of marital assets." Lucas took the papers from her trembling hands and scanned them, anger building with each paragraph. The language was clinical, devastating, designed to make Evelyn look like a woman in the grip of delusion rather than someone escaping control. There were dates, specific incidents twisted to support Thomas's narrative. The time she'd canceled a dinner party because she wasn't feeling well, reframed as social withdrawal and inability to fulfill basic obligations. At a shopping trip where she'd bought art supplies, described as impulsive spending during a manic episode. Her decision to leave characterized as abandoning the marital home without warning or rational explanation. "This is garbage," Lucas said flatly. "Anyone who spent 5 minutes with you can see you're not unstable." "Can they?" Evelyn's laugh was bitter. "Look at what I did, Lucas. I drove into the middle of nowhere and knocked on a stranger's door in the middle of the night. I'm living in a hotel room and spending my days at a cottage in the woods with a man I barely know. On paper, it looks exactly like what Thomas is saying: erratic behavior, poor judgment, running away from reality." "You're not running away. You're running toward yourself. Try explaining that to a judge." Lucas set the papers on the hood of the truck and took Evelyn's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. This is what abusers do. They rewrite history to make you look crazy, so no one believes you when you tell the truth. Thomas is using the system the same way he used your marriage, as a weapon. But you're not alone in this. You have a lawyer, you have documentation, and you have people who will testify to who you really are." "What people?" "I don't have anyone. Thomas made sure of that." "You have me, you have Maya, and you said your son would testify." At the mention of Caleb, something shifted in Evelyn's expression. "I haven't talked to Caleb since before the exhibition. I've been afraid to call him, afraid that Thomas might have gotten to him, convinced him that I really am." "Call him," Lucas said. "Right now. Use my phone." Evelyn stared at the phone Lucas pulled from his pocket like it might bite. What if he doesn't answer? What if Thomas has already... Then you'll know. But you won't know anything standing here imagining worst-case scenarios. She took the phone with shaking hands and dialed, putting it on speaker. Lucas heard it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then a young man's voice answered, cautious but not hostile. "Hello? Caleb?" Evelyn's voice cracked on her son's name. "It's Mom." "Mom, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days, but my calls kept going to voicemail. Where are you? Are you okay?" The relief in Evelyn's face was profound. "I'm okay. I'm with friends. Safe. But your father, I know what Dad's doing. He came to see me yesterday, tried to convince me you were having some kind of breakdown, wanted me to sign an affidavit saying I was worried about your mental health." Caleb's voice went hard. "I told him exactly where he could put his affidavit." Evelyn's knees buckled, and Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her. "You didn't sign it?" "Of course I didn't sign it. Mom, I've been waiting for you to leave him since I was 16 years old. You think I'm going to help him drag you back now?" There was a pause, then Caleb's voice gentled. "I meant what I said. If you need me to testify, I will. I'll tell the court everything I saw growing up, the way he monitored your calls, the way he made you account for every minute of your day, the way he'd punish you with silence when you didn't perform correctly. All of it." Evelyn pressed her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Caleb, if you do that, he'll cut you off. The trust fund, grad school, everything. I don't care about his money. I care about you being free." Caleb's conviction came through clear and strong. "Besides, I've been preparing for this. I've got scholarships lined up, and I've been saving. I can finish my degree without his help if I have to. I'm not a kid anymore, Mom. He can't control me the way he controlled you." Lucas watched Evelyn transform, shoulders straightening, spine stiffening, something like hope beginning to kindle in her eyes. "When did you get so brave?" she asked her son. "I learned from you. It just took you a little longer to find your courage again." A beat of silence. "Mom, who are these friends you're staying with? Dad seemed really fixated on some mechanic with a kid. Is that true?" Evelyn glanced at Lucas, and something warm passed between them. "Yes. His name is Lucas. He helped me when my car broke down, and he's..." She paused, searching for words. "He's reminded me what kindness without conditions looks like." "Is he there now?" "Yes." "Can I talk to him?" Evelyn held out the phone to Lucas with a question in her eyes. He took it, suddenly aware that he was about to be evaluated by a son who clearly loved his mother fiercely. "This is Lucas," he said. "Lucas, this is Caleb Moore. I need you to understand something. The young man's voice was serious, protective. My mother is one of the strongest people I know, even though she's forgotten that about herself. If you're helping her just to get something from her, or because you think a vulnerable woman is an easy target, I will find you and make you regret it. Lucas almost smiled at the threat. Understood. For what it's worth, your mother showed up on my doorstep in the middle of a rainstorm, and I gave her a place to sleep and helped fix her car. That's it. Everything since then has been her choice. Coming back, spending time here, letting my daughter build fairy villages in the yard while she figures out her next move. I'm not asking her for anything except to be honest about what she needs. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Okay, that's... okay. Thank you for helping her. She doesn't need as much help as she thinks she does. She's doing the hard work herself. Will you tell her that? She has a habit of not believing good things about herself. I tell her all the time. Sometimes it even sticks. Caleb laughed, the sound relieved. Keep telling her, she needs to hear it. His voice became serious again. And Lucas? If my father comes after you, and he will, don't underestimate him. Thomas More doesn't fight fair, and he doesn't lose gracefully. He'll look for weaknesses, things he can exploit. Protect yourself and your daughter. The warning settled cold in Lucas's gut, but he kept his voice steady. I appreciate the heads up. Take care of my mom. She takes care of herself. I just try not to get in the way. Lucas handed the phone back to Evelyn, who spent another 10 minutes talking to her son, making plans to meet once the semester ended, reassuring him that she was eating and sleeping and holding herself together. When she finally hung up, she looked exhausted but lighter, like she'd set down weight she'd been carrying for years. He's on my side, she said wonderingly. My son is on my side. Did you really think he wouldn't be? I thought Thomas might have convinced him. Thomas is very good at convincing people. She looked at the legal papers still sitting on the truck hood. But Caleb saw through him. All these years I thought I was protecting my son by staying, by not making waves, and he was just waiting for me to be strong enough to leave. Lucas picked up the papers and folded them carefully. What do you want to do about this? I want to fight. I want to reject their characterization of me as unstable and present the truth. But I'm scared, Lucas. I'm terrified that once we get in front of a judge, Thomas's version will sound more believable than mine. That 17 years of carefully constructed lies will outweigh the truth. Then we build a better truth. We document everything. We find people who've seen you since you left and can testify that you're not erratic or unstable. You're someone recovering from sustained psychological abuse. We make sure your lawyer has everything they need to counter Thomas's narrative. We? Evelyn's voice was small. You think I'm letting you do this alone? She moved into his arms without hesitation this time, burying her face against his chest, while the December wind picked up around them and the forest whispered its ancient songs of survival and endurance. I don't know how to thank you, she said against his shoulder. Stop trying to thank me and start believing you're worth fighting for. They stood there for a long moment, holding on to each other while the world kept spinning and Thomas More kept plodding, and somewhere in the distance, Maya watched through the kitchen window with the kind of wise, sad understanding that children of loss learn too early. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in legal warfare. Thomas's lawyers filed motion after motion, each one designed to paint Evelyn as incompetent, unstable, undeserving of a fair settlement. They subpoenaed her medical records, questioning her about every therapy session, every prescription, every moment of vulnerability that could be twisted into evidence of mental illness. Evelyn's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who charged exactly as much as she was worth, countered with documentation of financial control, emotional manipulation, and systematic isolation. She deposed Thomas's business partners and found inconsistencies in their statements. She gathered evidence of monitored phone calls and restricted access to bank accounts. She built a case that showed not a woman in crisis, but a woman escaping captivity. But it was brutal. Evelyn spent hours in Patricia's office, reliving the worst moments of her marriage, providing dates and details, and proof of the cage Thomas had built around her. She came back to the cottage each evening more drained than the last, and Lucas watched her fight exhaustion and doubt and the voice in her head that still sometimes sounded like her husband. He's claiming I was unfaithful. Evelyn said one night, sitting at Lucas's kitchen table while Maya slept upstairs. He's saying that I left him for you, that our relationship is proof I was planning my exit and looking for a replacement. Lucas looked up from the carburetor he was cleaning at the sink. We're not in a relationship. I know that, you know that, but on paper, she gestured helplessly. I spend almost every day here. I have lunch with you and Maya. I help with homework and yard work, and I took pictures of your house for my exhibition. Thomas's lawyers are going to use all of that to make me look like I was having an affair. Were you? No, Lucas, you know I wasn't. We're friends. You've been nothing but... I know. I'm asking if it matters what they claim when we both know the truth. Evelyn pressed her palms against her eyes. It matters because perception shapes reality in court. If the judge believes I left Thomas for another man, it affects the settlement. It affects how I'm seen. It affects everything. Lucas dried his hands and sat across from her. Then we tell the truth. The whole truth. That you knocked on my door as a stranger, that I gave you a place to stay, that you kept coming back because this was the only place you felt safe. We don't hide our friendship. We don't apologize for it. We just explain it exactly as it happened. What if they don't believe us? What if they do? Evelyn looked at him across the scarred kitchen table, and Lucas saw the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. But he also saw determination, the same steel that had allowed her to stand up to Thomas in the exhibition space, to tell her son she was fighting, to keep showing up day after day, even when it would have been easier to surrender. I'm so tired, she said quietly. I'm tired of fighting, tired of defending myself, tired of having my entire life dissected by strangers who think they know me better than I know myself. I know. Some days I think about taking the settlement, just signing the papers and walking away with whatever Thomas is willing to give me. At least then it would be over. Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. Is that what you want? No, but wanting something and having the strength to fight for it are different things. Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been fighting every single day since you knocked on my door. You're exhausted because you're winning, Evelyn. Thomas is throwing everything he has at you because he's scared. Because, for the first time in 17 years, he doesn't control you, and it's killing him. How do you know he's scared? Because scared men overreact. They file excessive motions, they make wild claims, they try to overwhelm their opponents with sheer volume of attacks. Thomas isn't acting like someone confident in their position. He's acting like someone watching their control slip away. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough? You are. I've seen your strength. Maya's seen it. Caleb's seen it. The only person who hasn't seen it yet is you. She was quiet for a long time, staring at their joined hands. Then she said, Patricia wants to depose you. And Maya. Lucas went still. Maya? Not in court. Just a conversation with the lawyers, on record. She thinks having Maya talk about how we met, about the nature of our friendship, would help counter the affair narrative. A 7-year-old doesn't lie well, and her testimony would carry weight. Absolutely not. Lucas's voice was firm. I'm not putting my daughter in the middle of this. I told Patricia the same thing. I said I wouldn't ask that of you. Evelyn pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. But, Lucas, they're going to keep pushing this angle. Thomas knows exactly what buttons to push. And he's using our friendship as proof that I'm morally compromised. If we don't counter it, then we counter it without involving Maya. I'll be deposed. I'll answer every question they have. But my daughter doesn't get dragged into your husband's legal warfare. Ex-husband, Evelyn corrected quietly. Or soon-to-be anyway. Fine. Your soon-to-be ex-husband. The point stands. They sat in tense silence, the first real friction that had emerged in their friendship. Lucas understood Evelyn's position, understood that she was fighting for her life and needed every weapon available. But the thought of Maya in a lawyer's office, being questioned about her father's relationship with a woman she'd come to care about, made his blood run cold. I'm sorry, Evelyn said finally. I shouldn't have even mentioned it. Patricia suggested it, and I should have shut it down immediately. Your daughter's well-being comes first, always. Lucas's anger deflated. I know you wouldn't ask if you weren't desperate. I'm not that desperate. Not yet. She managed a weak smile. They'll ask me again after next week's hearing. What hearing? Temporary support. Thomas is claiming that since I left voluntarily, I'm not entitled to spousal support during the divorce proceedings. Patricia thinks we can counter it, but it means going in front of a judge, presenting arguments, probably seeing Thomas across the courtroom. Her voice went shaky. I haven't seen him since the exhibition. I don't know if I can stand in the same room with him and not fall apart. You stood up to him once. You'll do it again. That was different. That was my space, my exhibition, my ground. A courtroom is his territory. He's comfortable there. She stopped, pressing her lips together. I'm terrified. Lucas stood and moved around the table, pulling Evelyn to her feet and into his arms. She came willingly, resting her head against his shoulder with a sigh that sounded like surrender and relief mixed together. I'll come with you, he said, to the hearing. I can't go into the courtroom, but I'll be in the hallway. And the second you walk out those doors, I'll be there. You don't have to do that. I know, I'm doing it anyway. Evelyn's arms tightened around him. Why? Why do you keep showing up for me when this isn't your fight? Lucas thought about his wife, who'd believed in opening doors and extending hands. He thought about Maya, who'd declared Evelyn their friend with the absolute certainty of a child who understood love better than most adults. He thought about the woman in his arms, who'd walked through rain and darkness to knock on a stranger's door, who'd been brave enough to leave everything she knew for a chance at becoming herself again. Because you're not just fighting Thomas, he said. You're fighting for the right to exist on your own terms, and that's everyone's fight. If I can stand in a hallway and remind you that you're not alone, that's the easiest thing I'll do all week. Evelyn pulled back enough to look at him, and Lucas saw something shift in her expression, something that made his heart beat faster and his breath catch in his throat. Lucas, she said softly, and his name in her voice sounded different than it ever had before. Then Maya's voice floated down from upstairs, calling for water, and the moment broke. Evelyn stepped back, and Lucas went to help his daughter, and they didn't talk about whatever had almost happened in the kitchen. But Lucas felt it humming between them for the rest of the night. Possibility and danger, and the kind of connection that could either save them both or complicate everything beyond repair. The hearing arrived on a Thursday morning gray with winter rain. Lucas drove Evelyn to the courthouse in Everett. Maya buckled in the back seat because she'd refused to go to school when she learned where they were going. I want to be there when Evelyn comes out, she'd insisted, so she knows we're waiting. Lucas hadn't had the heart to argue. They found parking and walked through rain to the courthouse steps, where Patricia Chen waited with a briefcase and an expression that suggested she was ready for war. You must be Lucas, she said, shaking his hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. Evelyn's told me a lot about you. All good, I hope. Mostly accurate, which is more important. Patricia looked down at Maya. And you must be the famous Fairy Village architect. Maya beamed. Maya, Evelyn told you about that? She did. Said you have very exacting standards for royal bridges. The Fairy Queen deserves the best. Patricia smiled, a real smile that softened her sharp features. I like her. Can I keep her? Sorry, Lucas said. She's mine. They went inside, through metal detectors and security checkpoints, until they reached a hallway outside the assigned courtroom. Evelyn was shaking, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her breathing too fast. I can't do this, she whispered to Patricia. I can't walk in there and see him and pretend I'm strong enough for this. You don't have to pretend, Patricia said calmly. You just have to tell the truth. I'll handle the rest. Lucas knelt in front of Maya. Stay with me, okay? We're going to wait right here for Evelyn. Can I hug her first? He looked to Evelyn, who nodded, tears already forming. Maya wrapped her arms around Evelyn's waist with fierce intensity. You're the bravest person I know, Maya said seriously, even braver than Daddy, and he's really brave. So you're going to go in there and tell them the truth, and then you're going to come back out, and we're going to get ice cream even though it's cold outside because brave people deserve ice cream. Evelyn laughed through tears. That sounds like a perfect plan. It is. I'm very good at plans. Patricia touched Evelyn's elbow gently. We need to go in. Are you ready? Evelyn looked at Lucas, and he saw everything she couldn't say. The fear, the gratitude, the connection that had grown between them from a knock on a door to something that felt essential to both their survivals. "I'm ready," she said. Lucas watched her walk into the courtroom, watched the doors close behind her, and then sank onto a bench with Maya beside him. They sat in the fluorescent hallway while rain drummed against distant windows, and lawyers in expensive suits hurried past with their important cases and their billable hours. "Daddy?" Maya said after a while. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Do you love Evelyn?" The question hit Lucas like a physical blow. He looked at his daughter, who was watching him with those two wise eyes that understood more than a 7-year-old should have to. "What makes you ask that?" "Because you look at her the way you used to look at Mom. In the pictures, like she's the most important thing in the room." Maya swung her legs, thoughtful. "And because she looks at you the same way." Lucas didn't know how to answer that, didn't know if he even knew the answer himself. What he felt for Evelyn was complicated. Part protectiveness, part admiration, part something deeper that he'd been refusing to examine too closely, because examining it meant acknowledging that his heart had survived Sarah's death after all, and was capable of feeling things for someone new. "I care about her very much," he said carefully. "She's become important to us. To both of us." "But do you love her?" Maya persisted. "I don't know, Maya. That's the honest answer. I don't know what I feel yet." Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to all of life's big questions. "That's okay. Mom used to say that love is like building something. You start with a foundation and see what grows. Maybe you and Evelyn are still building the foundation." Lucas pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her wisdom and her grace and the way she carried her mother's philosophy forward like a torch in the darkness. "When did you get so smart?" he asked. "I've always been smart. You just noticed." They waited for 90 minutes that felt like 90 years. Finally, the courtroom doors opened and people began filing out. Lawyers, clerks, Thomas More in a suit that cost more than Lucas's truck. Thomas saw Lucas and Maya on the bench, and his expression went cold, calculating. He started to move in their direction, but his lawyer grabbed his arm, said something sharp, and steered him away. Then Evelyn emerged with Patricia, and Lucas saw immediately that something had shifted. Evelyn's face was blotchy with tears, but her spine was straight, and her head was high, and when she saw Lucas and Maya, she smiled like they were the only good things in a world full of ugliness. "How did it go?" Lucas asked, standing. "We won," Patricia said with satisfaction. Judge granted temporary support and wasn't impressed with Thomas's characterization of Evelyn's mental state. He basically told Thomas's lawyer that attempting to paint a woman as unstable for leaving a controlling marriage was not going to fly in his courtroom. Evelyn pressed her hands to her face. He saw through Thomas. The judge actually saw through him. "Told you," Patricia said. "Judges deal with this stuff all day. They know what abuse looks like, even when it's dressed up in expensive suits and clinical language." Maya tugged on Evelyn's hand. "Time for ice cream now." Evelyn laughed, the sound bright and free. "Absolutely. Ice cream for everyone." They went to a small shop near the courthouse, and Maya ordered something with sprinkles and gummy bears, while Lucas and Evelyn sat across from each other at a tiny table clearly designed for children. Patricia had gone back to her office, promising to call with next steps, leaving them alone with Maya and the sweet relief of a battle won. "I testified," Evelyn said quietly, watching Maya examine her ice cream with scientific precision, "about the monitoring, the control, the way Thomas made every decision for me and called it love. I told the judge about the phone calls he tracked, and the credit cards he restricted, and the friends he slowly isolated me from until I didn't have anyone except him." "How did it feel?" "Terrifying and liberating, like lancing a wound and letting all the poison out." She looked at Lucas. "Thomas was sitting right there, listening to everything, and I didn't stop, I didn't minimize it, or soften it to protect his feelings. I just told the truth, and I didn't apologize for it." "I'm proud of you," Lucas said, and meant it with his whole heart. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears again, but she was smiling. "I'm proud of me too. For the first time in years, I'm proud of myself." Maya came back to the table, carefully balancing her elaborate creation. "Evelyn, you have to try this. It has 3 different kinds of candy in it." "That sounds medically inadvisable and absolutely perfect." They sat in the ice cream shop while rain continued outside, and the courthouse behind them emptied of its daily dramas. Lucas watched Evelyn share bites of Maya's ice cream monstrosity and felt something settle in his chest that might have been hope, or might have been the beginning of understanding what his daughter had asked him in the hallway. Evelyn caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. What? Nothing, just thinking. About? About how sometimes the best things start with the worst moments. How a broken-down car can lead to ice cream with a 7-year-old who has questionable taste in flavor combinations. Evelyn's smile was soft and real. I wouldn't change any of it. Not the car breaking down, not the knock on your door, not any of it. Even with everything else being terrible, I wouldn't change this. Me either, Lucas said. And in that moment, in a tiny ice cream shop on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Lucas realized Maya might have been onto something after all. That foundations were being built, piece by careful piece, and whatever grew from them would be worth the wait. The victory in court seemed to break something loose in Thomas. Over the next 3 weeks, his attacks became more desperate, more scattershot, like a man watching his carefully constructed empire crumble and grabbing at anything to stop the collapse. He hired a private investigator who followed Evelyn to the cottage, took photographs of her car in Lucas's driveway, documented every visit. He leaked stories to business journalists about his wife's breakdown and his concern for her well-being. He called Caleb 17 times in one day, each message more threatening than the last, until his son finally blocked his number and sent Evelyn a text that said simply, "I'm done with him. Whatever you need, I'm here." Patricia Chen filed counter-motions to every attack, building a case that showed not a woman in crisis, but a pattern of escalating harassment by a man who couldn't accept losing control. The judge was not amused. At a hearing 2 days before Christmas, he warned Thomas's lawyers that their client was dangerously close to contempt charges and suggested they advise him to focus on negotiating a fair settlement rather than waging a scorched earth campaign against his estranged wife. Evelyn came back from that hearing looking stunned. Thomas's lead attorney pulled Patricia aside after, she told Lucas that evening. They were sitting on his porch despite the December cold, wrapped in blankets and watching their breath cloud in the air. Maya was inside, ostensibly doing homework, but probably building elaborate scenarios with her toy horses. He said Thomas is starting to realize he's not going to win, that the judge sees through him, that Caleb won't testify on his behalf, that all his money and connections can't change the fact that he systematically controlled and isolated his wife for 17 years. What did Patricia say? She told him to make an offer, a real one, not the insulting settlement with the NDA attached. Something that acknowledges what I gave up to be Thomas's wife, what I'm owed for the years I spent building his career while abandoning my own. Lucas studied Evelyn's profile in the fading light. What do you want? If you could have anything out of this divorce, what would it be? She was quiet for a long time, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. I want enough money to feel secure, not wealthy. I don't need his wealth. Just enough that I'm not dependent on anyone, that I can make my own choices without calculating the financial consequences. I want my photography equipment back, the pieces I had before we got married that he convinced me to put in storage because we didn't have room. I want my maiden name back. Her voice went softer. And I want him to acknowledge what he did, not publicly. I don't need a public apology, but I want him to admit on the record that he controlled me, that the marriage wasn't the partnership he claimed it was. You think he'll give you that? No, Thomas doesn't admit fault. Ever. It's not in his DNA. She turned to look at Lucas. But Patricia thinks we can get close. A settlement that's generous enough to speak for itself, even if Thomas never actually says the words. Money as apology, assets as acknowledgement. Is that enough for you? Evelyn considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, I would have said no, that I needed the actual words, the explicit admission. But now? She looked toward the cottage, where warm light spilled from the windows, and Maya's laughter drifted faintly through the glass. Now, I think I need his absence more than his apology. I need him out of my life completely so I can figure out who I am without him. Lucas understood that. He'd spent 4 years figuring out who he was without Sarah, learning that survival wasn't the same as living, but was sometimes the necessary first step toward it. When will you know? He asked. About the settlement? Patricia said to expect an offer after the new year. Thomas's lawyers want to wrap this up before it goes to trial. A trial would mean public records, media attention, details about his marriage becoming part of the public conversation. That's the last thing he wants. She smiled grimly. Turns out Thomas's need for privacy might be the thing that finally sets me free. The offer came on January 7th, delivered via email to Patricia's office and forwarded to Evelyn with a note that read, "This is better than I expected. Call me." Lucas was in the shed when Evelyn's car came up the drive, moving faster than usual, gravel spraying from her tires. He set down the timing belt he'd been examining and stepped into the weak winter sunlight to find her climbing out of the BMW with her phone clutched in one hand and an expression he couldn't quite read. "He did it," he said, breathless. "Thomas actually did it." "Did what?" "Made a real offer, a fair one." She looked at her phone screen like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. "He's offering me $2 million, the condo in Portland that's in both our names, full ownership of my photography equipment and the pieces we had in storage, and a stipulation in the divorce decree that acknowledges differing recollections about the nature and dynamics of the marriage." Lucas tried to process those numbers. $2 million was more money than he'd see in 3 lifetimes. That's substantial. It's more than substantial, it's freedom. Evelyn's hands were shaking. "Patricia says it's a strong offer, that I should take it, that fighting for more would mean months more of court battles and no guarantee of a better outcome. She thinks Thomas is scared, really scared, that this is going to trial and that he's trying to buy his way out before it gets worse. What do you think?" "I think—" Evelyn stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. "I think I want it to be over. I'm tired, Lucas. I'm so tired of fighting, of reliving the worst parts of my marriage every time I talk to lawyers, of having Thomas's shadow hanging over everything I try to build. The money is enough, more than enough. And the acknowledgement, even if it's couched in legal language, is something. It's Thomas admitting, however carefully, that we remember things differently, that maybe his version isn't the only truth. So you're going to take it." It wasn't a question, but Evelyn answered anyway. "I don't know. Patricia wants me to think about it for 24 hours, make sure I'm not agreeing just because I'm exhausted. But Lucas—" She looked at him with eyes that had been shadowed for so long, finally starting to clear. "I think I'm done fighting. I think I just want to sign the papers and close this chapter and start writing a new one." Maya burst out of the house at that moment, having heard the car. "Evelyn, I finished my book report. Want to read it?" Evelyn's expression transformed instantly, the tension melting into genuine warmth. "I would love to read it. Is it about the whale book we got from the library?" "Yeah. I wrote about how the whale was actually lonely, not scary, and that's why he kept following the ship. Mrs. Henderson said it was a very mature interpretation." "It sounds brilliant. Show me." Lucas watched them walk into the house together, Maya chattering about whales and loneliness, and the difference between being scary and being misunderstood. He stood in the yard for a long moment, thinking about settlements and freedom, and the way Evelyn's shoulders had looked lighter than he'd ever seen them. That evening, after Maya was in bed, Evelyn stayed later than usual. They sat in the living room, a space she rarely occupied, usually sticking to the kitchen or porch. And Lucas noticed how comfortable she looked on his worn couch, her shoes kicked off, her legs tucked under her like she belonged there. "I'm going to accept the offer," she said without preamble. "I called Patricia an hour ago and told her to move forward. We should have the papers finalized within 2 weeks." "How do you feel?" "Relieved, terrified, like I'm standing at the edge of something huge and I'm not sure if I'm about to fly or fall." She looked at Lucas. "I'll need to figure out what comes next. Where to live, what to do with the money, how to actually build a life instead of just surviving." "You'll figure it out." "Will I?" "Because right now, the only thing I'm certain about is that I want to keep taking pictures and I want to keep coming here." She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "This place, you and Maya, you've become my anchor. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do when the divorce is final, and I don't have court dates and lawyer meetings to structure my days around." Lucas heard what she wasn't quite saying. "You're not going to lose us just because the divorce is over." "Aren't I?" "Lucas, I've been using you as a refuge, as the place I run to when everything else is falling apart. But once I'm actually free, once I have my settlement and my own place and my life back, what if you realize you were just being kind to someone in crisis? What if this whole thing was about you helping me survive? And once I'm surviving on my own, there's nothing left." The vulnerability in her voice made Lucas's chest ache. He set down the beer he'd been nursing and turned to face her fully. "Is that what you think this is? Me being kind to someone in crisis? I don't know what to think. I knocked on your door in the middle of the night, and you've been taking care of me ever since. Maybe that's all this is, you being a good person who helps people. And maybe once I don't need help anymore, I won't have a reason to keep showing up. Evelyn, look at me." Lucas waited until her eyes met his. "You stopped needing help weeks ago. You've been fighting your own battles, making your own decisions, building your own strength. The only reason you're still showing up here is because you want to. And the only reason I keep answering the door is because I want you to." "You want me to?" "Yes. I want you to keep coming here. I want Maya to keep showing you her homework and her fairy villages and her elaborate theories about whale psychology. I want to keep finding you on my porch with coffee, talking about light and aperture and the way shadows fall across broken things. I want—" He stopped, realizing he was about to cross a line they'd been carefully avoiding for months. "What do you want?" Evelyn asked softly. Lucas thought about his daughter's question in the courthouse hallway, thought about foundations being built and what grew from them, thought about the way his heart had started beating differently when Evelyn's car came up the drive, the way the cottage felt more like home with her in it, the way he'd spent 4 years believing his capacity for love had died with Sarah only to discover it had just been waiting for the right person to wake it up. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not as someone who needs help, not as someone using me as a refuge, just as you. As Evelyn, who takes beautiful pictures and makes my daughter laugh and reminds me that life doesn't end just because part of it dies." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "Lucas, I'm still married. I'm still technically someone's wife. We can't. I know. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. I'm telling you that when this divorce is final, when you're free to make your own choices without lawyers and judges and your husband's shadow hanging over everything, I want you to choose to keep coming here, to choose this, whatever this is or might become. And if I'm too broken, if I'm too damaged from 17 years of Thomas to be good for anyone, then you're broken in a house where broken things are welcome. But Evelyn," Lucas reached for her hand, threading their fingers together, "you're not nearly as broken as you think you are. You're healing. I've watched you heal, watched you get stronger, watched you become more yourself every single day. The woman who knocked on my door in the rain barely knew who she was. The woman sitting on my couch right now knows exactly who she is and what she's worth. That's not broken. That's the opposite of broken." Evelyn made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "When did you become so good with words?" "I've had a lot of time to think about survival and healing. Turns out experience is a decent teacher." She was quiet for a moment, staring at their joined hands. Then she said, "I need to tell you something about why I really keep coming back here. Okay? It's not just because this place feels safe, it's because you feel safe. You and Maya, you don't need anything from me except to be honest. You don't expect me to perform or manage your emotions or be anything other than exactly who I am in any given moment. And her voice cracked. "I haven't felt that way with anyone in so long that I'd forgotten it was possible. You make me feel seen, not the version Thomas wanted me to be, not the version I think I should be, just me, exactly as I am, and somehow that's enough." "It's more than enough," Lucas said roughly. "Evelyn, you're more than enough." She looked at him then with an expression that made his breath catch, longing and fear and hope, all tangled together in a way that made Lucas want to pull her close and promise her things he had no business promising while she was still technically married to another man. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently and said, 2 weeks. Get through the next 2 weeks, sign the papers, finalize the divorce, and then we'll figure out what comes next. Together." "Together," Evelyn repeated, like she was testing the weight of the word. "I like the sound of that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands still joined, until Evelyn finally stood to leave. At the door, she turned back and kissed Lucas's cheek, quick and soft and full of promise. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for staying, for building a foundation strong enough to hold both of us." Then she was gone, and Lucas stood in his doorway watching her taillights disappear, his cheek still warm from her kiss, and his heart full of something that felt dangerously close to hope. The next 2 weeks moved with agonizing slowness. Papers were signed, lawyers conferred, final details were hammered out. Thomas made one last attempt to add stipulations to the settlement, requirements about where Evelyn could live, who she could associate with, restrictions disguised as protective measures. Patricia shut them down immediately, and the judge made it clear that any further attempts to control Evelyn's post-divorce life would result in sanctions. On January 22nd, Evelyn signed the final divorce decree in Patricia's office. She called Lucas from her car afterward, her voice shaking. "It's done," she said. "I'm officially Evelyn Moore. Not Thomas's wife, not anyone's wife, just me." "How does it feel?" "Like I can breathe for the first time in 17 years. A pause. "Can I come over?" "You don't have to ask." She arrived an hour later with champagne and flowers and an expression that was equal parts joy and terror. Maya met her at the door with a shriek of delight. "You're really divorced now? Like, for real, for real?" For real," Evelyn confirmed. "Does that mean you're going to stay? Daddy said maybe you'd stay." Evelyn looked at Lucas over Maya's head, and he saw the question in her eyes. He nodded, giving her permission to answer honestly. "I'd like to stay," Evelyn told Maya, "if that's okay with you and your dad." Maya's whoop of excitement could probably be heard in the next county. "We have to celebrate, with the fancy plates and everything." She ran inside to start setting the table with the wedding registry dishes, leaving Lucas and Evelyn alone on the porch. "I meant what I said," Evelyn told him quietly. "About staying. I don't mean moving in or anything presumptuous like that, but I want to keep coming here. I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me." "We'll let you," Lucas said, "on one condition." "What's that?" "Stop asking permission. You're not a guest anymore, Evelyn. You're family. You've been family since the moment you helped Maya build that first ferry bridge." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Family? I haven't had that in a long time." "Well, you have it now, for as long as you want it." They opened the champagne and toasted to freedom, to new beginnings, to the strange and winding path that had led a desperate woman to knock on a stranger's door in the rain. Maya insisted on a tiny sip, made a face at the bubbles, and declared that apple juice was superior in every way. They ate dinner on the good plates, and Evelyn told them about her plans, a small gallery space in Everett she was looking at renting, photography classes she wanted to teach, a life built around art instead of obligation. "What about the condo?" Lucas asked. "In Portland?" "I'm going to sell it. Too many memories, and it's in Thomas's world anyway. I'm looking at places around here. Nothing fancy, just something that's mine," she smiled. "Somewhere close enough that I can still come help with fairy villages and terrible homework assignments about whale psychology." "How close?" Maya asked immediately. "I don't know yet. I'm still looking, but definitely within driving distance." Lucas felt something warm settle in his chest at the thought of Evelyn putting down roots nearby, building a life that overlapped with his and Maya's in intentional ways rather than accidental ones. After dinner, Maya fell asleep on the couch mid-movie, exhausted by excitement. Lucas carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed, coming back down to find Evelyn washing dishes at his sink with practiced ease. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I want to. It's nice doing normal things in a normal kitchen without worrying about whether I'm loading the dishwasher correctly or using the wrong soap." She rinsed a plate and set it in the drying rack. "Thomas had specific ways he wanted everything done. I spent so many years trying to remember the right way to fold towels and arrange groceries that I forgot there wasn't actually a right way. There was just his way, and I'd convinced myself it was the same thing." Lucas picked up a dish towel and started drying. They worked in companionable silence until the dishes were done and the kitchen was clean, and then they migrated to the porch despite the January cold, because that's where their most honest conversations always seemed to happen. "I have something for you," Evelyn said, pulling an envelope from her coat pocket. I've been carrying it around for a week, waiting for the right moment. Lucas took the envelope and opened it to find a photograph. The one she'd taken of him and Maya at the kitchen table, the one she'd asked permission to use in her exhibition. But this was different. This print was larger, printed on expensive paper, matted and ready for framing. I wanted you to have it, Evelyn said, as a thank you and as proof. Proof of what? That good things still exist, that kindness is real, that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things, and broken down cars in the middle of nowhere can be the beginning of something beautiful. Lucas stared at the image, at himself and his daughter, bent over a drawing in perfect morning light, looking like proof that life continued even after loss. He saw what Evelyn had captured, not just a father helping his daughter, but a moment of pure presence, of being fully alive in the world instead of just surviving in it. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. Thank you. Evelyn moved closer, and Lucas was suddenly very aware of how small the porch was, how little space existed between them. I have one more thing to say, and then I'll stop being sentimental and let you get some sleep. I'm not tired. Good, because this is important. She took a breath. Lucas, I know we've been dancing around something for months. I know there's been this thing between us that neither of us wanted to name because I was still married and you were still healing, and it felt wrong to want something when everything else was so complicated. Evelyn, let me finish, please. She waited until he nodded. I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's love or gratitude or just two lonely people finding comfort in each other. But I know that when I think about my future, about the life I want to build now that I'm free, you're in it. You and Maya, this cottage, these conversations on cold porches, all of it. And I need to know if that's just my imagination or if you feel it too. Lucas set the photograph carefully on the porch railing and turned to face her fully. In the weak light from the kitchen window, Evelyn looked young and uncertain and so beautiful it made his chest ache. I feel it, he said. I've been feeling it for months, trying to be respectful, trying not to push when you were still fighting for your freedom. But Evelyn, yes, I feel it too. What do we do about it? We take it slow. We figure it out as we go. We don't rush into anything just because we both want this. He reached for her hand, the gesture familiar now. I lost Sarah 4 years ago, and I thought that was it for me. Thought I'd had my chance at love, and I should be grateful for the time we had. And then you knocked on my door, and suddenly I'm thinking about futures again, about possibilities, about what it might look like to let someone new into the spaces Sarah left behind. I don't want to replace her, Evelyn said quickly. You couldn't if you tried. Sarah will always be part of me, part of Maya. But that doesn't mean there's no room for you. The heart's not a finite space. It expands to hold what matters. Lucas pulled her closer. You matter, Evelyn. You matter to me, and you matter to Maya, and I want to see where this goes. But only if you're ready. Only if you're choosing this because you want it, not because you think you owe me something or because I'm the safe option after Thomas. You are the safe option, Evelyn said, but not the way you mean. You're safe because you let me be myself, because you don't need me to be anything except honest, because when I'm with you, I don't have to perform or calculate or manage anyone's expectations. I just get to be. And that kind of safety? That's not settling. That's everything. Lucas kissed her then, gentle and careful, mindful of how new this was and how fragile. Evelyn kissed him back with 17 years of repression finally breaking free, and they stood on his sagging porch while winter stars wheeled overhead and the forest whispered its approval, and somewhere inside, Maya slept peacefully, dreaming of fairy queens and ice crystals and families built from broken pieces. When they finally pulled apart, Evelyn was crying again, but these were different tears, joy instead of grief, release instead of pain. I want this, she whispered. I want you. I want Maya. I want messy kitchen dinners and fairy villages and conversations on cold porches. I want to take pictures of your house and help with homework and learn what it means to be part of something without losing myself in it. Then stay, Lucas said. Not tonight. We're taking this slow, remember? But come back tomorrow and the day after. Keep showing up until it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like home. It already feels like home. Good. Then keep coming home. They stood together for a while longer, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, while the cottage settled around them and the forest kept its ancient secrets and the future unfolded in ways neither of them could predict, but both of them were willing to face together. When Evelyn finally left that night, Lucas watched her drive away with the knowledge that she'd be back. Not because she needed refuge, but because she wanted to be there. Because broken down cars and midnight knocks and fairy villages had somehow led them to this moment, and they were both brave enough to see where it went. Inside, the cottage was quiet. Lucas checked on Maya, still sleeping peacefully, and then stood for a long moment in the hallway, holding the photograph Evelyn had given him. Tomorrow, he'd find a frame for it, hang it somewhere Maya would see it every day. Proof that they'd survived their losses and found something beautiful on the other side. But tonight, he just held it and remembered knocking on doors and answered prayers and the specific miracle of two broken people finding each other in the darkness and choosing to build something new in the light. 3 months later, Evelyn opened her gallery in Everett, a small space with good light and white walls, perfect for displaying photographs that told stories about healing and transformation and finding beauty in broken things. Lucas and Maya helped with the setup, hanging pictures and arranging chairs and taste-testing the cookies Evelyn had baked for the opening reception. Thomas didn't come. According to Caleb, who'd driven from grad school to support his mother, Thomas had started dating someone new, a younger woman who worked in his company and looked at him with the same admiring devotion Evelyn once had. The cycle continuing, but at least this time Evelyn wasn't trapped in it. Caleb stood in the gallery on opening night, looking at his mother's photographs with something like wonder. "You did it," he told her. "You actually got out and built something for yourself." "I had help," Evelyn said, glancing at Lucas, who was trying to prevent Maya from eating all the cookies before guests arrived. "Still, you did the hard part. You chose yourself." Caleb pulled his mother into a hug. "I'm proud of you, Mom." The gallery opening was small but successful, with enough sales to make Evelyn believe this might actually work as a career. She'd also started teaching weekend photography workshops, filling her calendar with students eager to learn about light and composition and capturing truth through a lens. She'd found an apartment in Everett, nothing fancy, but it had good light and space for a darkroom and was close enough to Lucas's cottage that she could be there in 20 minutes. She split her time between both places, learning the rhythm of maintaining her own space while being part of Lucas and Maya's lives. Learning that love didn't require surrender, that partnership didn't mean losing yourself, that showing up was different than being controlled. On a Saturday in early April, Lucas was on the roof of the cottage, finally replacing the shingles he'd been meaning to fix for years. Evelyn sat on the porch below, editing photos on her laptop, while Maya worked on expanding the fairy village with materials from the craft store. "Higher!" Maya called up to the roof. "The Fairy Queen's castle needs to be higher than everything else." "I'm working on weatherproofing, not architecture," Lucas called back. "You can do both. You're good at both." Evelyn laughed, and the sound drifted up to where Lucas worked, warm and real and completely unguarded. He paused to look down at the scene below, his daughter and this woman who'd become essential to both their lives, working together in the spring sunshine, easy and comfortable and right. "Lucas?" Evelyn looked up, shading her eyes. "You okay up there?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how some knocks change everything. About choosing to answer instead of hiding." Evelyn smiled, the expression full of understanding. "Best decision you ever made?" "Second best," Lucas corrected. "First was keeping the door open after you left, making sure you knew you could come back." "I'll always come back," Evelyn said softly. "You know that, right?" "I'm starting to." That night, after Maya was asleep and the roof was repaired and the fairy village had been properly admired, Lucas and Evelyn sat on the porch that no longer sagged quite so badly. The window was fixed. The kitchen light worked consistently. The cottage was slowly transforming from survival shelter into actual home, piece by careful piece. "I've been thinking," Evelyn said, her hand warm in his, "about the future, about what I want it to look like. And I want this. Not the apartment in Everett. That's fine. It's mine. But it's not home. This is home, you and Maya, and fairy villages and porch conversations. I want to wake up here and make breakfast in that kitchen and help Maya with homework at that table. I want to build a life with you, Lucas, slowly, carefully, in ways that respect what we've both been through. But I want to build it together. Lucas felt his heart expand in his chest, making room for hope and fear and the terrifying possibility of choosing happiness after loss. Move in? Eventually, not tomorrow. We're still taking things slow, but someday, when it feels right, when Maya's ready, when you're ready. I'm ready now, Lucas said, and realized it was true. Sarah would have liked you, would have loved watching you help Maya grow. And I think she'd be glad I answered the door that night instead of staying safe and lonely. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. You think so? I know so. Sarah believed in open doors and second chances and building families out of broken pieces. This, he gestured at the cottage, at them, at everything they were creating. This is exactly what she would have wanted for us. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky, while inside the cottage Maya dreamed of fairy queens and families and the magical way broken things could be made beautiful again. 6 months after that, on October evening when the leaves were turning gold and the air carried the first hint of winter, Evelyn moved into the cottage officially. Not running from anything this time, but running toward something, toward love that felt safe, toward partnership that respected boundaries, toward a family built on choice instead of obligation. She brought her cameras and her photographs, and the memories she'd chosen to keep from a life that had tried to erase her. Lucas made space in closets and drawers, and Maya helped arrange Evelyn's things with the same careful attention she brought to Fairy Village construction. That first night with all of Evelyn's belongings, officially moved in, they ordered pizza and ate it on the good plates because Maya insisted that important occasions required proper celebration. After dinner, Maya fell asleep between them on the couch, and Lucas and Evelyn sat in the quiet, holding hands over their daughter's head. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered. "For what?" "For answering the door, for fixing my car, for letting me come back, for building something strong enough to hold all of us." Lucas kissed her temple gently. "Thank you for knocking, for being brave enough to run, for choosing to stay." And in the cottage that had sheltered broken things and witnessed healing, that had been a survival shelter and become a home, 3 people who'd found each other by accident and chosen each other on purpose settled into the life they'd built together. Outside, the forest whispered its approval, and the stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in the distance, another storm was brewing. But inside these walls, with the fairy village on the mantle and photographs on the walls and love in every corner, they were safe. Not because nothing bad could reach them, but because they'd learned that surviving storms was easier when you didn't face them alone. That sometimes the best things in life started with desperate knocks on wrong doors at exactly the right time. And that forever, built quietly from broken pieces and careful choices and answered doors, was worth every moment of fear it took to find it.